Welcome everybody to this meeting of the Planning Committee taking place from the Walton Suite and the Winchester Guildhall. It is Tuesday the 12th of December 2023 and the time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter and I'm Chair of the Planning Committee. To my right is Councillor Edwards, who is Vice Chair of the committee. Around the table we have the other elected members of the committee, and we are supported today by a number of officers: Lorna Hutchings from the planning team, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, the case officers, which will change with each item, and Claire Buchanan from Democratic Services, who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Please can I remind everyone to ensure your mobile phones and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. As this is a Tuesday, there will be a short fire alarm test today at around 10:15 a.m. So there will be a short pause whilst that happens. Please look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in and during the breaks for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn to make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. Now we turn to the formal agenda. Are there any apologies and deputy members?
Thank you, Chair. No apologies for absence received. All members are present. Thank you.
Any disclosures of interest, members? Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do wish to declare a predetermination in respect of agenda item 11, as I am also a member of Littleton Hairstock Parish Council and its planning committee. Having previously raised support for the electric vehicle charging hub at Three Maids Hill roundabout, I will leave the room during consideration of this item, taking no part in the discussions or determination of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Personal but non-prejudicial interest as ward councillor for items 6 and 9.
That's okay. Thank you. Any others? Councillor Reid.
As we're going down this route, item 13, I'm a board member. I've had nothing to do with this application until this point in time.
I should probably make the same declaration for item number 11. I have not discussed this item at the parish level or any other. Okay, next on the agenda is minutes of previous meetings.
Chair, it's an appropriate time. Following a query raised, we have the following statement to make in respect of agreeing minutes of an earlier committee, that the minutes of the 18th of October 2023 be agreed, subject to an amendment to note that in respect of item 9, Planning Appeals Courting Report, Councillor Reid raised a query in relation to the lack of enforcement action taken in relation to Midhurst Lands Farm in Buns Lane, Hambleton. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna. So with that addition, are we agreed that minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of October and the previous meeting held on the 15th of November are both accurate?
Chair, I'd just like to make a comment about item 9, the City Ground Hillier Way, Winchester, Hampshire Stadium. At item 8, I think it's under on the page 19. It says the proposal addressed the environmental concerns linked to the proposed 3G pitch. It may be a case of semantics, but the proposal, of course, we discussed it and we passed the planning application, but we did not fully address that we mitigated the impact of the 3G pitch. It's not been fully addressed. There is still a risk. And so I'm just wondering whether the words could be changed appropriately, please.
It's a matter for members as to whether or not the minutes are accurate or not. So you can take a vote as to whether or not you want the amendments as proposed by Councillor Lee, or if you feel they're a fair and reasonable reflection of the debate, then the vote can be taken on whether or not the minutes are accurate. And that's you, Chairman.
I think addressed does cover mitigated as well, because addressed means we discussed all the issues, which we did do.
If we as a committee feel that it's correct, then fine. But it does give the impression that.
All right, well, I'll take the minutes separately then. So first of all, are we agreed now with the amendment as read out by Mrs. Hutchins that the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of October should be agreed? Is that agreed? Thank you. Okay. And now I want to take a vote on the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of November. Can I see those in favour of agreeing those, please? And any against? So those also agreed. Thank you very much, members. We now need to accept the update sheet as an addendum to the report. So, members, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Councillor Lee?
Chair, I'd just like to raise a point of order before we start proceedings. I have asked several times for some key motions passed by this council to be included in the informatives, which should be part of our deliberations when we talk about planning applications. The first one is to protect our local rivers and waterways by taking account of the cumulative impact of pollution. And the second one is the nature emergency, which was declared in September. I hope that we can include that in informatives going forward and certainly consider that for this meeting.
Mr. Lucas?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. So as members are aware, to raise a point of order, it's governed by the Constitution. So bear with me whilst I quickly go through the Constitution as to the point of order and the point you're making. Puts me on the spot now in terms of constitutional law. Thank you, Councillor. So part 4.1 of Council Procedural Rules, a point of order shall relate only to an alleged breach of a procedural rule or statutory provision. The member must indicate the rule of law and the way in which they consider it's been broken, and also the procedural rule. Council, I'm afraid what you're suggesting in relation to adding informatives isn't actually a point of order in terms of the interpretation of the Constitution. So I'm afraid, Madam Chairman, I can only advise that that is not an appropriate point of order in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. All I will say, Councillor Lee, is that I have had a brief discussion with our planning officers about the point that you have just raised, and they will address it. And if you would like to have further discussions with them about that, please take that offline. Thank you very much. Now we move to the business items on the agenda, and we go to the first application, which is
Sorry, can I just interrupt? I'm sorry.
Sorry, Councillor
Yeah.
Ashwell.
Did have my hand up. Item 6, actually, that's not in Whiteley Shedfield ward. It's Central Meon Valley ward. So that's incorrect.
Okay, thank you very much. So just as a matter of information, it's in the Meon Valley ward. Thank you very much for that. It must be right on the boundary, hence the confusion. Thank you. Okay, so this is our agenda item 6, and it is an application for 80 dwellings and some Class E commercial space at land at Solomon's Lane, Waltham Chase in Hampshire. Our presenting officer is Rose Chapman. So if you'd like to give us your presentation, please, Rose. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw members' attention to the update sheet where there have been several updates in regard to this application. And additional to that, I have a verbal update to make. I realised going through last night that the footpath going through public open space had not been secured as part of the heads of terms for the section 106, so that should be added. And there are a couple of missing conditions regarding visibility displays being retained and ensuring that any planting within visibility displays is no higher than 0.6 meters in height. So with your permission, I'll add those to the end of the
Thank you.
Rose. Thank you. So the application is one of the last allocations to come through as part of the local plan part 2. It's under policy WC1, and here is the policy map as shown within the local plan. So the area highlighted in gold is the area that we are considering today, but for to be complete, the policy does include the area highlighted in green, which is highlighted as land to the east. But just to make it clear, this area, the land to the east highlighted in green, is not part of the application that we are considering today. Give a wider understanding of the policies for Waltham Chase, this is the policy map for the village. So at the bottom, at the point of the cursor, is the WC1 Morgan's Yard application that we are considering today. WC2 is at the top, WC3 to the west, and WC4 is split over 2 sites to the east. As part of the overall policy considerations within the local plan, the schemes within Waltham Chase were required to make a payment or a donation of land to the expansion of the primary school within Waltham Chase. The other sites that have been completed and are now occupied, they have made a monetary contribution to the school and various educational facilities within the area. WC1 was written to include a donation of land for the school expansion. Unfortunately, the most recent ONS data that has come forward and has been confirmed by Hampshire as Education Authority has indicated that they can no longer support an expansion to the primary school, and therefore that is not considered as part of this application. So here we have a general constraints plan as a general way to understand the various aspects that are around the application site. Just to focus in, so to the north, the area in pink, at the point of the cursor, this is the village hall. Currently, parents will park in here and take this orange footpath as indicated down to the school. The area in yellow is a triple SI, Waltham Chase Meadow. The blue line that you can see running across to the north is a stream that runs through the triple SI, and you can see the blue areas within the site here. The attenuation and swales would be linked to this as part of the surface water management. The purple running down the side, this is the existing public sewer that runs underneath Winchester Road. You can see the retained trees highlighted in green. And moving to the south of the site, the red arrows are existing access points, some of which are being retained, as you can see. And to the east here in blue, this is the school. This band highlighted in orange here, this is a band of TPO trees that are proposed to be removed as part of the development. So as part of the policy, a master plan was required, as the policy covered 2 areas as shown on the policy map that I showed you earlier. It did include the land to the east, WC1A, which is this green area hatched. However, just to emphasise, this is not part of the red line plan and we are not considering any development within this area today. So the master plan, as shown on the left-hand side of the screen, the orange areas are residential, the purple and yellow are commercial, and the green areas at the top and on the corner here are proposed open space. And so we move on to the red line plan. As you can see, the primary school to the east here. Solomon's Lane runs along the south of the application site and Winchester Road runs along the west. There is an existing dwelling on the western side of the application that is not included within this application. This is Rose Hill Cottage. And Rosalind Cottage on the corner, southeast corner of the application site. This dwelling is part of the application site and is to be removed and replaced. So here we have an aerial view of the site. As you can see, there is an existing amount of hard standing with a number of garages on site. There is a paddock on site as well that is mostly scrubland at this point. It's clear to see at this and from this side there is an existing oak tree at the point of the cursor that you can see here. This oak tree is due to be retained and will form the focus for the public open space. So here we have a compare and contrast exercise. On the left-hand side of the screen is the original scheme that came in. As you can see, this was for approximately 98 dwellings. There was significantly less public open space. It was very dense. Yesterday morning, we discussed public open space being on the corner at the height of the hilltop. In the original application, you can see at the point of the cursor here, there would have been a very large block of flats on that corner. It was thought that this would have given a very urban feel to the as a welcoming entryway to Waltham Chase as a rural village and was not considered to be appropriate. And the frontage along Winchester Road was very parking dominated because of the location of the commercial units. I'll go into it slightly a little bit later, but the policy does also require a clear footpath to link from the Winchester Road, which is shown here, to the school. This was not a clear or not clearly indicated in this original scheme. On the right-hand side is the scheme that we are considering today. As you can see, along the Winchester Road, the commercial unit has been brought forward to provide some active frontage. On the corner, there is a green open space to give a more rural welcome to the village when arriving from the south. There is a significant uptake in public open space, and the oak tree that I showed you earlier is the focal point of that and would provide an end vista for those entering the site from Solomon's Lane from the main entrance. The footpath is shown here, and this is the footpath to the primary school that I mentioned earlier as part of my verbal update to be secured as part of section 106. So to look a little bit closer at the scheme, just to reorient people, Winchester Road is at the top, runs at the top of the screen here, and Solomon's Road runs on the left-hand side of the screen here. The school would be at the bottom of the screen. So you can see the existing dwelling here would be given a slightly larger plot than existing. The commercial spaces here, there are a set of bollards located at the point of the cursor here. So while there is an access from Winchester Road, it would not be possible for cars to come through and use it as a shortcut to get to the school for drop-offs, but it would allow for pedestrian and cycle access through the site. There are a number of other footpaths. There's one that runs along the side here, and as you can see throughout the site, there are a number of footpaths that link into the wider footpath network outside of the site. The affordable housing would be located in this location at the bottom of the screen here, so to the east of the site. And public open space, as you can see, there are 2 swales here and a lap or local area of play included in this application as well. And then we have some street scenes just to give you an idea of the design of the proposed dwellings. At the bottom corner of the site, it's slightly small, but the top and middle lines, they are shown at the bottom here. They run along, it's the view along Winchester Road. So you have the public open space at the top here with some residential, and it finishes with this flexible employment unit at the end here. Onto the middle line, you have the light industrial unit here. This is the retained dwelling that's outside of the red line. And then it takes up again for this corner up to the red line with some public open space in front of this dwelling here. This bottom line is the frontage along Solomon's Road, so you can see this blue line at the bottom of the screen here. You can see a lot less dense. They are detached for the most part. Public open space you can see here, and the main access to the site you can see here. And then we have some internal road sections. So the top 2 lines run through this pink line here. So it's this pink line here, and you can see the public open space at the top here that runs through the site all the way through down to Solomon's Lane. This second from the bottom line, this is the dogleg view, the red line here through the centre of the site. So it starts with a flexible commercial space going into the residential. You can see the public open space back into residential and the edge of the site here, with the footpath going into the door right at the end. This bottom section, slightly difficult to see, it's this yellow section here that shows the affordable housing section and its relationship within the development. Just to give you some ideas on the proposed employment space. So this is the light industrial building. It's located at the bottom of the site here. So this would face onto Winchester Road. And while there is a blank elevation that would face the road as shown at the point of the cursor here, this is proposed to have some planting in front. And the top would be staff welfare facilities and ancillary office space. So this would face Winchester Road and provide some natural surveillance. The internal elevation, so you'd have the workshops on the ground floor and the ancillary spaces on the top floor. The side elevations have been left intentionally blank so that they would prevent overlooking to the neighbouring property that would be retained. Here we have the flexible employment building that I showed you earlier. So the internal elevation, this building here at the point of the cursor. So natural surveillance would be included. At the bottom left-hand corner, this is the elevation that would face the road, so there would be an active frontage. The other two elevations have also been left blank with some material detailing to prevent overlooking to various properties around them. So if we move on to some visibility displays along the area, these ones specifically relate to the visibility displays along Solomon's Lane. So at the top, there is a new access that is proposed, and you can see the visibility lines that are 2.4 by 45 metres in each direction. The main access, at the point of the cursor here, again, 2.4 by 45 metres. This is a retained access, so there's very little that would change. It would just be replaced with a more durable surface, some additional planting. At the point of the cursor, we have the second new access along Solomon's Lane that you can see. And finally, at the bottom, we have the retained access that currently serves Roslin Cottage. Along Winchester Road, these are the visibility displays. So at the top, we have the proposed access. This would serve the dwellings towards the north of the site. In the middle, we have the retained access that currently serves the industrial buildings, and this would remain as the employment area access. And at the bottom, we have a retained access that would serve a retained cottage that's outside of the red line plan, and you can see that suitable visibility displays have been achieved. Here we have the landscaping plan. It's very detailed, so I'll just highlight some of the areas. So this is the south of the site. You have the access into Solomon's Lane here. We have the public open space on the corner here with the idea is that there will be significant additional hedge planting that fronts the roads to ensure that there's more of a rural feel and very green space to be around. All of the planting proposed is to be native species. Moving on to the north of the site, this is the retained oak tree that we looked at yesterday. Again, we have a number of hedging along the boundaries, specifically the boundary with the school, the boundary with the SSSI to the north, and some planting along the boundary along the east as well that you can see here. Within the public open space at the north, there is a 10-metre buffer included to the SSSI. So this has been proposed to be planted. So the area closest to the SSSI, we have the native hedge, followed by a lot of undercroft shrub planting, and then some rough turf planting. On the other side of the open space is more durable planting. Excuse me. And you can see some swales. These are proposed to be a maximum of 1 metre in depth. So this application does include a local area of play. These are generally for Key Stage 1. So smaller children to let them run around and play. This area is proposed to be enclosed with a hedge. And in this case, the applicant has indicated that they would provide some stimulation for the children to play, so some boulders to climb, some logs to climb, and some variation in land levels, as you can see. It has been somewhat unclear as to whether or not these have been acceptable, so there is a condition within the recommendations for further details of this local area of play equipment to be agreed. So moving on to some drainage, there are two companies that cover Waltham Chase. This blue line is the Portsmouth Water Lines. And the pink lines here, these are the Southern Water Lines, which provide the foul drainage. There has been historically some issues with drainage, specifically within Brooklyn Close, which is on the other side of the road around here. Condition 7, as recommended within the report, requires that the applicant work with Southern Water and submit a phasing plan for occupation, so that any works that are required by Southern Water to update the system can be taken care of prior to any occupation, and it would not exacerbate the foul water any more than necessary, and can therefore afterwards be updated and can accommodate all the additional development within the village. Moving on to some biodiversity enhancements. So the larger green arrows, these are habitat boxes. The purple arrows that you can see around the public open space, these are bat boxes within the dwellings, and scattered around the development there are bat tiles at strategic places. We also have some specific bird enhancements. As you can see, the different coloured arrows are for specific birds. So we have red arrows for swift boxes, orange arrows for sparrow boxes, pink arrows for house martins, and other generic bird boxes are the blue arrows. Finally, we can move on to some photos in and around the site. So at the top, we have the view from the school looking down Solomon's Lane, sorry. And at the bottom, you can see a view from outside of the site looking over into the site, the existing building, Roslin Cottage here. This would be replaced. At the top, this is the existing access to Roslin Cottage. This would be retained and improved to serve the new dwellings. At the bottom is the existing access into Morgan's Yard. As you can see, there is a lot of hard standing as existing. At the top, you can see one of the existing office buildings on site and the extent of some of the hard standing. At the bottom, this is the view from the corner looking up Solomon's Lane. From that same corner at the top, this is the view where the public open space would be. At the bottom, we have the view along Winchester Road, and you can appreciate the existing footpaths. These are taken from within the office building, and you can see from across the site, it's a lot of hard standing. This is on the right-hand side, an existing garage building that was for B2 uses. And at the bottom, this is the view towards Solomon's Lane. At the top, you can see the TPO trees that would be removed. It was discussed yesterday, but there have been a number of possibilities discussed to see if we could retain these trees. Unfortunately, anything to thin them out or reduce them would likely end up with them dying, and therefore it was considered that their removal was more beneficial, and they have been proposed to be replaced with a number of trees throughout the site. To the bottom, you can see more of the hard standing and the triple SI running along the back of the site here. At the top, you can see the existing paddock that would be removed. And at the bottom, this is somewhat out of date. It was taken earlier this year. This was the relationship between the triple SI, which you can see here, and the site. It has been somewhat updated and cleared out at present. So at the top here, you can see this is the retained oak tree that would form the central part and the focus of the public open space. And at the bottom, this is the TPO trees that would be removed, and the garage building we saw earlier and the office building. And finally, a view of the frontage along Winchester Road. The recommendation is to approve, Chair.
Thank you very much, Rose. We now move to public speaking. And our first public speaker is David Ogden, who's speaking in a personal capacity. If you'd like to come forward, David, thank you. And you have 3 minutes when you're ready. You know the operation of the mic and everything. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm also the chair of planning for Parish Council, but this is personal. This is the last part of a master plan for the village. All the other good sites are good, creating good children's play areas, large open spaces. Developer of these sites on the 106 agreement paid nearly £1 million towards education fund on the condition that this application had land east of the school for educational purpose, but not only for educational purpose. What's been missed is for public open spaces as well. The parish council negotiated with the developers for these facilities. When this application was submitted against the local plan, the parish tried to negotiate with the developers. We employed consultants to negotiate on behalf of Clean Slate. We came up with alternatives which met with the approval of senior planners. We contacted other developers and also landowners for a compromise. Clean Slate blocked all these forms of negotiations and communications. The garages, shared offices and workplaces are still in use today. There's been no consultation with the owners of these businesses of what will happen to the future. The local plan allocated 250 houses to Wolverhampton Chase. We are well over that now without this development. The site is extensively used for employment, but no heed was given to those types of industry in this application. In 2017, the matter was already before the planning inspector, who agreed that this land should be open for open spaces. It's falsehood. The application didn't own this land. It's also falsehood. The application, all the education money went to Bishop's Waltham. Wolverhampton Chase received absolutely nothing. This application has a constraints plan which details land not under the control of Winchester, not under the control of Clean Slate. No one from Winchester has even contacted their landowners. I don't know how it's in the plan. In 2017, there was a £2.5 million contamination bill allegedly put forward. These are using the same figures today. There is a government offset to actually pay for all this money. The application is 420 entries with 120 public objections. We've had a public meeting about this. They cannot all be wrong. The site is over density. It's 30 houses per sector, per hectare. There's no open spaces, just borders around the site. The proposed children's play area consists of 3 logs. This should be 40% affordable houses, but this is 10. No doubt they'll be on player words by Mr. Lucas, but the site is not fit for purpose in its current site. We agree that it should go and be built on. A few years down the line, this will be worse. I can understand why the planning department wants to get this off their books. Numerous agencies have commented over the last 2 years, and almost all their questions have gone unanswered. Around Winchester area, you will be proud of the site that you decided upon.
Time, I'm afraid.
If it gets
Mr. Ogden.
improvement, this will be worse on record.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry,
No, that's fine. I just have to be fair with everybody. Members, do we have questions of clarification? Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Mr. Ogden, you mentioned overdevelopment. I know that when this current plan was first adopted, Waltham Chase developed enormously. Virtually every site was booked in within the first 18 months. Do you know the numbers by which you are currently overdeveloped by?
16. 250, we've got it 266 houses.
Okay. And can you just confirm that, I think you were talking about the commuted sums which went to Bishop's Waltham. How did you get to Bishop's Waltham?
Well, there was a caveat on the 106 agreement that it had to be spent within 1 mile of the site. And for some unknown reasons, it was planned before the 106 agreement was signed. The school at Bishop's Waltham is literally 100 metres within the 1 mile from our boundary from Sheffield Parish Council. 100 metres.
Can I therefore ask, were you not a third party to the transaction?
No, we
of
were
land
not.
swap?
No.
Was any land transferred to the parish council?
None.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. You've spoken about this area of play in the public open space area in between the swales. Can you tell me what the what type of play areas were provided for children in the Hawthorne Grove, Hornbeam Road and South Sandy Hill close developments, which are much smaller than this one?
Oh, they are absolutely lovely, especially the Hawthorne Close one. If you go to the other side of the road, they've got a lovely open green, and the one further up Sandy Lane has got one area and also good swage areas and good open spaces. It is, I mean, we like it. We negotiated with it, not my time, someone else's time, but they are good. You have a look at it. I did send an invitation for everyone on this committee to have a look at what WC 2, 3 and 4 to actually prove that point that they've done a lovely job. And it's credit from this committee to actually get this through. They're lovely.
Very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ogden. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ogden, you mentioned the parish council had a public meeting. Do you know if the applicant had a public meeting?
Shall I wait for that?
Of course, we are expecting this alarm. Okay,
I'm just glad it wasn't my phone.
just wait a moment.
I would have been in the doghouse.
Okay, that's all working good.
Okay.
Carry on, please.
Thank you very much. I contacted Clean Slate in relation, they were given an invitation to attend. I also asked them to have a consultation with the public because they hadn't. And after that, they had a consultation, an open meeting for the day. But I noticed that none of the results are actually presented in any of the documents that they put forward to this committee today.
Councillor Lee.
Mr. Ogden, firstly, congratulations. Your tenacious monitoring of this over the years is commendable. I've noted the points of concern. Assuming that this does go ahead, what other improvements would you wish to see that are of concern to you?
My main concern is obviously the sewage flooding in that area. If you notice on their own report, it says most of the northern area is at medium or high risk of flooding. No one's picked that up. That my residents get flooded quite often. Brooklands is one further down the road, which is Bull Lane. The other main concern is the safety of children walking to school. If they close this new access at the back of what's called the boardwalk. It will make the children walk to school so close to the road, it is untrue. And that is my secondary concern. There's others, but they're the two, sorry.
Thank you very much. I will just say that we did have a site visit yesterday, and members were encouraged to go and have a look at the other sites that you've referred to,
Thank you.
which I'm sure most of us did do a drive-by and have a quick look. So thank you very much for raising that with us, and thank you very much for coming along this morning.
Thank you.
If you'd like to switch off the mic and return to your seat, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Ian Donoghue on behalf of the Parish Council. Do you also have Councillor Jones with you?
Yes.
To answer questions, I understand. Lovely, welcome. So between you, you'll have 3 minutes. When you're ready, you know how to switch on the microphone. Thank you very much.
Chairman, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the item. My name is Ian Donoghue. I represent Sheffield Parish Council. Alongside me, Margaret Jones, who would answer any questions that you may have from the parish. I just want to concentrate on 3 main issues. The requirements of the policy are shown in the officer's report and refer to 2 sites, WC1, WC1A, for which a master plan is required to demonstrate how the 2 sites will be brought forward. To give some background to the policy, the site was originally earmarked for 65 houses and the allocation to the school for an extension. At the local plan inquiry, the developer offered WC1A for community recreation land. On this basis, the allocation was up to 100. However, as indicated in the officer's report, the applicant Clean Slate does not own WC1A and therefore cannot deliver the community recreation land. The upshot is we now have a scheme of 80 houses with no land available for the parish. Not that the parish need the land, the offered contribution will not provide for this. On behalf of the parish, I did speak to the developer about the provision of alternative land to WC1A, but they were unable to provide any. I also spoke to the planners about whether they would accept a joint scheme with the current landowners of WC1A to deliver the master plan. The planners considered there was merit within this, however, Clean Slate were not prepared at this time to consider this an option. Clearly, the proposal as it stands does not comply with policy. And as committee members, you need to consider whether the scheme for 80 dwellings, with in particular no provision of community recreation land, really achieves the aims of the policy and meets the needs of the parish. In terms of density, it's interesting to note the obvious report does not state what the density of the scheme actually is, or how it compares to other sites. Just to help, the density of the site, excluding commercial, is approximately 30 dwellings per hectare. Chase Farm close to the north is approximately 15, and land south of Forest Lane, a recent development, is 17. Clearly, in relation to other development in Waltham Chase, the site is overdeveloped. Squeezing 80 houses onto the site results in poor relationships between dwellings, only 5 visitor spaces, no disabled parking in the employment area, and only a token area of open space. In the officer's report, it says there is an outstanding objection from the design review panel. I'm surprised the officers have not reconsulted the panel on such an important scheme, especially the provision of progress with the previous criticism. Provision of affordable housing is significantly short of the 40% requirement. Clean Slate have provided a viability assessment, and part of the assessment have utilised vacant building credit to reduce the 40% by almost 10%. However, VBC to be used, many authorities require that the buildings must be vacant at the time of submission or have been marketed. And importantly, any vacant buildings should not, as a result, intention to redevelop. In my view, the buildings are still being used, and it is just the intention to redevelop.
I'm afraid that's the end of your time. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yeah.
Members, do we have any questions of clarification for the Parish Council representatives? Councillor Lee.
Thank you. That was very clear. I wonder if you could just unpack the design review panel's concerns and articulate exactly what you think the issues are.
I only went off from what the actual report said in terms of the actual concern about the overdevelopment. They were quite specific, and I'm sure the planner will be able to provide those. I was just surprised that they hadn't actually gone back to the design review panel to pick up the points that had actually been raised.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just regarding the current open space within the parish. Are you on a shortfall or have you got an abundance?
It is on a shortfall.
To what degree?
Got the-
Approx? Are you, I know I asked the previous speaker, Mr. Ogden, with regards to a third party to this development, are you a third party with the handover of land, or is the land destined for elsewhere? Open space.
Could you just clarify? As I understand it, the third party ownership, they did put a planning application in, which offered the land that the parish were interested in. However, that application was subsequently refused. It was at that time when I did approach Clean Slate to see if they were prepared to actually work with the third party to see if there was an option for delivering the master plan. At the time, Clean Slate, I spoke with the planners were thought the utility had merit to have a joint scheme which would deliver this open space to the parish. However, when I went back to Clean Slate at the time, they said they wanted to wait for the outcome of the application and they weren't prepared to negotiate.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, members? No? Thank you very much indeed. If you could switch off that microphone and return to your seats. Thank you. We now turn to one of the ward councillors, Councillor Malcolm Wallace. If you'd like to come forward, Councillor Wallace. You know the routine now. You will have 5 minutes when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I echo some of the points that were made earlier, but I think it's worth going over some of them again. I wanted to start by providing a bit of context. Under the current local plan, which runs from 2011 to 2031, Waltham Chase has a requirement for about 250 new dwellings. These 250 houses, which were earmarked to be built over 20 years, have already all been built. And Waltham Chase has already grown by 28% in the last 10 years. This is a massive change for any village and has put a strain on services and infrastructure in the area. If the current application is approved, this will result in the village expanding by almost 40% in a little over 10 years. Several times the planning report refers to the fact that the number of houses for Morgan's Yard has reduced from 100 in the local plan to 80 in the current application. However, it is important that the committee understands that this is still 80 houses over the requirement for Waltham Chase in the local plan. Or to look at this another way, there isn't a need to squash lots more houses into this planning application because the requirement for houses in Waltham Chase has already been achieved. However, despite this, and whilst you've already heard some of the concerns about the application, it's important to note that most of the residents and the parish council fully recognise that Morgan's Yard area needs redevelopment. So the concerns are really focused on how that development occurs. Firstly, on housing density, the proposed housing density at Morgan's Yard is higher than any other site in the village. Of the recent developments, well, we've got some slightly contrasting numbers. Sandy Hill, I think it's 20 dwellings per hectare. Hawthorne Grove at 25, Hornbeam Road at 18. And in contrast, the housing density at Morgan's Yard is over 30 dwellings per hectare. There is considerable concern on whether the proposal before you will have sufficient space to deliver an attractive, well-landscaped scheme that is expected in a village. And it's not only locals who feel this way. Urban Design have objected to the application, and the Winchester and Eastleigh Design Review Panel stated that the proposed architecture seems to be generic, with proposed buildings that do not contribute to the sense of place. The panel were disappointed that the approach did not go further by providing a more holistic response to deal with the site context and local character. There is also concern about the amount of affordable housing in the proposal. As noted in the report, birth rates in the area are decreasing, primary school is reducing numbers, and the preschool is struggling to fill its places. Young people are struggling to find affordable housing in the area, so more affordable housing is needed. However, unlike the other developments in the village, which have 40% affordable homes, the proposal before you is for 10% affordable properties, or just 8 homes. This doesn't meet local needs. Sustainability is another issue. As far as I'm aware, that housing build standards have been kept to the minimum. Right, there are no additional proposals for sustainability measures such as heat pumps, solar panels, or EV charging points. Questions need to be asked about the viability assessment that has led to this application being considered acceptable. Obviously, there's land remediation work that needs completed, but our understanding is that this receives tax relief at 150%. And while the costs of building materials have increased, has this been reflected in, for example, a lower land value? Or are the profit margins being retained at the expense of providing a high quality development? In addition to this, on wastewater management, there are genuine concerns about the wastewater infrastructure in Waltham Chase. While Southern Water's commitment to reinforce the network is welcome, their statement that it may be possible for some initial dwellings to connect pending network reinforcement should be challenged. Just last week, as I was coming back through Waltham Chase past the Morgan's Yard site, wastewater was coming out of the manhole cover on Winchester Road. This water was then going into the drainage ditch that flows along the southern end of the site, which from there flows into the River Hamble near Botley. If there's already wastewater entering our waterways when it rains heavily, how can adding to this problem be justified? Per the motion that this council approved last year, we should also be seeking clarification from Southern Water on the capability of their treatment works to manage the cumulative impact of this additional sewage, and in particular on the number and or duration of sewage discharges into local rivers or seas. I did not see this information in the portal. Finally, we need to ensure that the application benefits the local community. Concerns have been raised that the plans to replace the footpath to the school and the community want any new footpath from Morgan's Yard to be in addition to the existing routes. Also, whilst contributions of 25k towards school travel improvements and 60k for sport provision are welcome, these need conditioned to ensure the funds are for use in Sheffield Parish only. Overall, the application feels like it squashes as much development into the site as possible without sufficient consideration for managing the quantity and quality of that development. I hope you will consider these comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Members, do we have questions of clarification for the local councillor? No, I think you were extremely clear. Thank you very much, Councillor Wallace. Okay, our final public speaker is the supporter and agent Simon Packer. Mr. Packer, good morning. You will have 3 minutes, and the time will start when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. The application relates to a long-standing primary brownfield site allocated in the adopted local plan for a mix of residential and commercial uses. However, since adoption, circumstances relating to the policy allocation criteria have changed. Significantly, as confirmed by Hampshire Education Authority, the expansion of the school on land to the east is no longer required. My client has explored opportunities to deliver related open space on this land as requested by the Parish Council. However, the existing owner of the land was unwilling to negotiate. The residential element proposes a mix of 80 units, ranging from one-bed flats to detached family housing, providing a balanced and mixed community. The viability report submitted with the application sets out the rationale for a reduced affordable housing and has been ratified by the Council's internal specialist advisor. The net density of the residential development equates to 30 dwellings per hectare. Whilst comparatively higher than other recent developments in Waltham Chase, these are on greenfield sites on the village edge, where lower density is preferable. A density of 30 dwellings per hectare is considered appropriate on a primary brownfield site where policy advises making efficient use of land. The existing industrial uses on site necessarily have some impact on local amenity, including the adjacent school, from noise, dust fumes and lorry vehicle movements. The proposed commercial uses are restricted to Class E uses that can be carried out in a residential area without detriment to amenity. They include medical health uses of benefit to the local community. The layout and design responds to local context based on guidance within the Village Design Guide, the High Quality Spaces SPD and feedback from the Design Review Panel. Your office conclude, and we agree, it offers a high-density, well-designed scheme. Well-designed scheme. The majority of existing trees and hedgerows are retained, including a large oak as a feature within the open space. The Council's Landscape and Recreation Officer has confirmed no objection to the layout and quantum of open space, subject to securing an off-site contribution towards sports provision. There are other specific points my client would like to highlight. There is a 15.75% biodiversity net gain and an enhancement to the setting of the adjacent SSSI. A permanent, safe and accessible pedestrian route will be provided through the development to access the adjacent school, whereas the current parking drop-off and route through the SSSI cannot be guaranteed in the long term. A traffic order along Solomon's Lane will be provided to prevent parking up to the school entrance, and there's a commitment from Southern Water to provide suitable upgrades to the drainage infrastructure to both accommodate the development and alleviate existing issues. All statutory consultees have confirmed the proposals are acceptable, including Southern Water. This application represents an important opportunity to secure the regeneration of this brownfield site and all the related benefits that it would bring. We would therefore endorse your officer recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, questions or clarification for the agent? Councillor Lee.
Thank you for that. I note that the design review panel has an outstanding objection, and I wonder if you could just explain why you perhaps have not gone far enough to meet those concerns.
My understanding is that the objection relates to the original scheme, and whilst the design review panel were not consulted on the revised layout, what we have been able to do is to look very carefully at the comments and the feedback from the design review panel and take that into account with officers in revisiting the scheme. So we feel comfortable that the proposed scheme in front of you responds to those design review panel comments.
Can I ask about the sustainability elements? Future Home Standards is over the horizon. So what is the general intent to ensure that we get the best sustainable elements into the housing on this site?
So as you correctly state, Future Home Standard comes into play, I think, in 2025. So it's probable that a high proportion of these houses will need to comply with that standard anyway, just in terms of timescales. But I can tell you that clients exploring opportunities based on the current standards to do what they can. And that includes, actually, there are some EV charging points, for example, within the scheme.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. On your submission, you say the approach to the school will run across the northern side of the site. What proposals are there for lighting on that particular stretch?
I believe there is a condition which would require that detail, but the whole idea of having the footpath within the development offers the opportunity of natural surveillance and security. So it should be a more attractive route from the point of view of security than going through the effectively the fields that exist at the moment. So yeah, we're comfortable that the pedestrian route will be a safe route for children.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that the reason the children go the route they go at the moment is because the parents can park. On the Winchester Road, parents can't park, or at least they can with considerable difficulty. Could you tell me about the heating requirements for your properties? Is it proposed there's going to be any solar panels or heat pumps on the dwellings?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm not aware that there are specifically, but there is the Future Home Standards coming very soon around the corner, and it will obviously be a requirement to comply with the relevant building regulations that exist at the time. So I think the intention would be timescale depending that the majority of these dwellings would probably need to comply with those standards.
So would I assume that electric or gas is going to be the main source of heat?
Well, as I say, it will depend on the timescales, I think. The building regulations are in place. That is the standards that are used currently. Yeah, it will depend on the standards that exist at the time that these houses are constructed.
Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Packer, are you content that an area of play with a couple of logs and boulders is a responsible, thoughtful or considered provision for children to play in?
It often depends on the individual site circumstances, I think. With this application, obviously there are challenges because it's a brownfield site. There is an ambition to achieve a level of density. There's an ambition to deliver commercial uses as part of the development. And what the amended plans do is introduce a greater level of open space, and included within that is a local area of play. So it's true to say that it's not necessarily comparable with some of the other schemes that have been developed in the village in terms of play space. However, this is a brownfield site with very specific circumstances and challenges, rather than a greenfield site where obviously those challenges don't necessarily exist.
I'm particularly concerned about the lack of swings, slides, climbing frames and things like that, which children will obviously enjoy a lot more than climbing boulders and logs in the middle of two swales.
Yeah, what I would also add to that is that the site is within walking distance of the recreation ground, which is to the immediate north. And there are standards in place through the Fields and Trust guidance which relate to acceptable walking distances. So it is possible that the future residents and children of this development would be able to access those facilities within the recreation ground.
Thank you very much.
If I could just add, that is also conditioned that the exact layout and whatever is provided in that LAP. So, Councillor Lee and then Councillor Lake.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on the issue which I know is troubling the construction industry at the moment, and that is the rising costs. Inflation and so on is hitting the industry very hard. You've obviously got a contamination cost understanding to remediate the contamination on the site. I guess that could change. So I wonder if you could comment on that. But you know, the profits are going to be squeezed. So how can we be assured that the quality of what we get is going to be as it should be, for residents when they occupy these properties?
Well, if you were to resolve to approve the application, it would be expected to be delivered based on the permission. So all of the commitments that sit before you today as part of the proposals and all of the condition details to follow, of course, are at the discretion of the local authority to approve. So it's within the council's behest to ensure that that quality is implemented through the permission.
And can you just comment on the contamination investigations and costs?
Yes, I don't know the detail other than to say to you that obviously detailed assessments of the contamination extent and the cost of extraction are considered within the viability report, which has been assessed by the council's advisor, and they have concluded they're comfortable that those costs are reasonable in relation to the proposed development and the level of affordable housing that's been provided.
Thank you. Councillor Laming.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to the sustainability point. Are you aware that our policies ask for a higher level than the government minimum standard that you're proposing? Because we're asking for a level 5. Would you like to make a comment on why you're not going to meet our standards?
My understanding is there are emerging policies within the local plan that do seek a greater level of requirement, but the current policy context does not require that. So when you are looking at particularly brownfield sites like this, where costs are critical, it becomes part of the overall discussion and debate as to what is reasonable to come forward in relation to policy requirements. So going above and beyond policy requirements, which I believe is the case with this, is a difficult decision with complicated sites like this.
Yes, but our current policy asks for a level 5 and you're proposing level 4. And that's really where we're coming from. And I think that that is something that every builder should consider, because it comes back to what the owners are going to have to pay in energy.
I think we'll leave this to the officers to cover, if that's all right, councillor Laming. I think you've you've covered that from your point of view. I think that's perfectly clear. Thank you very much. Are there any more other questions or clarification? No. Thank you very much indeed for coming along. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Chapman, do you have any updates for us before we go to members' questions on what you've heard from the public speaking?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the sustainability arguments that have been put in place, we have conditioned details under CP11 for energy efficiency and water efficiency. But I think it should be noted at this point that there have been some very recent building regulations updates that far surpass our requirements for CP11. So naturally, within the building, out of any application of this application, if it's approved, they would have to surpass the requirements of CP11 and in terms of energy efficiency and water usage. And just in regard to external lighting, we do have condition 6 within the report that requires details of any external lighting and street furniture as well. So if the footpath to school does require lighting, then details of that can be submitted and assessed under the details of in compliance applications.
Yes, I think it's clear that people are concerned that that footpath should be well lit in an appropriate way. Councillor, we're not up to members' questions just yet. Is there anything else you wanted to add? Yeah, Mrs. Chapman.
Not at this stage, no, thank you, Chair.
All right, I'm going to take, I think I'm going to take questions on the whole report, but if you could just say what page you're referring to, if that would help, that would be great. So, Councillor Lee, did you have a general question? Thank you.
General question, sorry, I can't find the page, but it refers to comments that we've heard, and that is the issue which we saw on site yesterday on the Winchester Road frontage. That is a very narrow pavement. The traffic, as far as I could see, even my short time standing there yesterday, and I've seen it many times before being a ward councillor, it moves at a rapid rate. I'm very concerned about passengers, pedestrians moving down that area, particularly in view that one of the shops is not actually close to this site. So I just wonder what is it you think might be the art of the possible to improve the situation. I note that on the Solomons Road, the frontage of buildings is set back, but on the Winchester Road, clearly things are quite tight up on the pavement edge. Is there a way to work with the developers to try and improve the situation? Maybe highways.
Thank you. The existing pathways around the site were assessed by Hampshire's Highways Authority, and they were considered to be acceptable in terms of width for what they are required to do. But I think it should be noted that as part of the heads of terms within section 106, there is a travel plan, and a framework travel plan has been included as part of the application to reduce sort of car movements and enhance various aspects around the village. At the moment, there's no specific detail about the final travel plan, but it could be that could be explored as part of it. But as it stands, Hampshire Highways are happy with the current layout of the footpaths as they stand.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank Rose for an extremely difficult job yesterday in showing such a large party around, and I confer with Councillor Lee, the road itself was exceedingly busy and running at a speed that would be quite dangerous, looking at the footways on that particular road. There are three
It
crossings.
is officially 30 miles an hour, isn't it?
I know it's officially, but I think some people have some numeral problems. But looking at the three road crossing areas, not one of them was a Pelican crossing. The fact that children are now going to start crossing there, should we not be pushing highways for a Pelican crossing at that point where it meets up with the proposed new footpath? We spoke also yesterday about the adoption of highways within the site. Could Rose please just point out which roads are going to be adopted and which aren't at this point? And I have a couple more questions after that.
Thank you. So Hampshire Highways do an assessment as part of any application of this size of local road networks and crossings, and they have said that in this instance a Pelican crossing is not deemed necessary as part of this application. So at this point in time there hasn't been a requirement to push for a Pelican crossing within the village. But to move on to your second question, just to clarify, the majority of the site is to be adopted. The areas that are not considered to be adopted are the small clusters that of dwellings with their own access. So there's one section here. So these 4 houses. There's another 2 here, which serve these 5 houses. And there's one at the top here, which would serve these 6 houses. These are all the private sections. Everything else is proposed to be adopted by Hampshire.
Thank you, Julia. That, as I say, it was a question that was asked yesterday, and it's just a matter of asking again to get the proper feedback. With the sustainable drainage, I noticed in the report, and I must admit I read the report very quickly because I didn't get the papers until Saturday morning. Equally so, my iPad had gone down as well, so I couldn't refer to that. The pipe size is 4 inches. Are we quite certain that is adequate, considering we've heard from, I think, the parish council this morning that there is a certain amount of flooding within the locality?
Thank you. So the stream that runs through the Triple SI has been known to flood at some point, but it's not ever come into this area of the site or anywhere within the red line plan that I've been made aware of. And looking at cross-referencing maps, it hasn't been highlighted as part of the EA maps. So the pipeline to link the swales at the top of the site. So there's one along here and there's one here. Size of pipe has been assessed by Hampshire as local lead flood authority, and they have deemed it appropriate to prevent a faster rate of runoff, so that there is likely to be more water within the swales at any given day, just to make sure that further flooding is not created to create and a harmful impact would be created as part of that.
Thank you. Could I finally ask, Chair, with your permission, the proposal for the landscape management of the site?
So at the present, it's not entirely clear who will be managing the site. As part of the Section 106 negotiations further down the line, we would offer the parish council to take on some of the public open space, and then we'd negotiate a fee payment for a commuted sum to allow for the management. If they don't feel that they are in a position to take on the public open space, then a management company would be set up, and details of that would be required as part of the 106, as well as a condition, which is, bear with me. I can't find it, but it is in there. There is a condition requiring details of the management company and management details of the landscaping. So I can find that for you in a few minutes.
Perhaps I could also remind members that in the update sheet, there is reference to a bond being required to secure the open space to ensure that it is properly laid out initially. And that that is an additional requirement that's in the update sheet. Okay. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry,
Thank you,
point of
Rose, for
order,
the.
Sorry.
Point of order.
Yes,
The
councillor.
councillor left the meeting room during the meeting.
She did leave the meeting room, but very briefly, and I did not
So it's
consider.
permissible now to leave the room
The,
for a short time.
it's
Could
at
I
the
ask you-
chair's discretion, councillor Reid, and I did not consider that she had missed anything of any significant import.
I thought this was a legal issue.
It's a matter for you, Chairman. It's obviously the period of the debate that the councillor has missed may be quite crucial to her determination in voting. It's a matter for you, Councillor Ashworth. If you feel that you've missed quite a large part of that debate, it's a matter of as to whether or not you want to stay, exercise your right to vote. However, it could lead to standards issues. So it's really an issue for you. You want to recuse yourself at this point, or if you feel that actually you did not miss material parts of the debate and you feel able to vote, it's really a matter for you. Sorry to put you on the spot, but the point of order has been raised. Thank you.
No, that's fine. I do feel I didn't miss that much.
I think it was like literally 2 minutes, and I'm happy for councillor Ashwell to remain if you don't think you missed anything.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I do have a question if that's.
She did have a cough, and I think she was just.
Yeah,
going
I was choking, so it's better I went out nearly.
No, thank you, councillor Reid. Thank you for raising that, and it's perfectly legitimate to do so. And I did notice that she left, and I did make a note, and I gave her I thought, well, if it's more than a certain amount of time, and I was listening to also the information that was coming across during public speaking that she missed. I don't think she went very far, but it was a very short period of time, and I'm content that she hasn't missed anything that would significantly impact her decision making. Right, let's go to your question, councillor Ashwell. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to thank Rose for her report and for the site visit yesterday. I noticed on the comments on the planning website, there's a letter from the school regarding the current footpath that's there and the proposed new footpath. The school would like to have the current footpath in place as well as the new footpath. Just wonder if you can comment on that, please.
So as part of the routes to school, there is a footpath that runs through the public opens, through the SSSI, excuse me. Let me just bring it up. So it's this orange route here that's highlighted. This runs through third-party land, which I understand is owned by DEFRA. And because it runs through the SSSI, it's highly sensitive and there's no guarantee that it will remain open indefinitely. It is outside of the confines of this application. So by introducing an additional footpath from Winchester Road to the school as part of the policy, it would not override the use of that footpath as long as DEFRA are happy to carry on offering its use. The footpath within the public open space is to comply with the policy and give more options if and when DEFRA decide that they no longer wish to provide a footpath through the SSSI.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Well, actually, my question has just been covered by the last one, but thank you.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, sorry, Rose. I should have thanked you yesterday for your visit and for the report in front of us. we picked up on this yesterday, and I appreciate biodiversity net gain regulations, if you like, are not coming in until January. So what we've got in front of us is a positive gain, which is fantastic. But there were some questions from the Hampshire County Council ecologist, which suggested that the report in front of us, or certainly posted to the portal, was incomplete. I wonder if you can comment on that and whether that's going to be completed. So that's my first question. And my second question, page 52, then cross to page 55, para 21. Prior to commencement of development, a condition survey and report of the adjacent watercourse be undertaken. And I just want clarification, because that para 21 on page 55, it actually talks about surface water discharge to the watercourse shall be limited to 10.6 litres per second and 5.3. Well, surely we have to do the survey first to understand what we should be considering in terms of water discharge. So I wonder if you can clarify that as well, please. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of biodiversity net gain, as you quite rightly pointed out, this doesn't actually become a requirement until January next year, sorry. So at present, we are asking developers, especially for larger sites such as this one, to demonstrate that they can provide approximately 10% additional biodiversity net gain. From the top of my head, I believe there's approximately 15 to 17% biodiversity net gain on this site. And I understand that the ecologist did raise some concerns regarding how that was calculated. In general terms, at this point, because it's not a legal requirement, we ask that in compliance with CP16 that developers show that there is an increase in biodiversity net gain. It doesn't necessarily have to meet entirely with the legislation that's coming forward. And in this case, while there were inconsistencies, it was my assessment that the proposed net gain in general was sufficient to meet CP16. And in regard to the water discharge rate, there was a drainage report submitted as part of the application that that Hampshire's League Local Flood Authority did assess, and there were details with that submitted, which led to the condition that you've pointed out being required. They have looked at the amended plans and the amended details that were submitted, and they said that they were acceptable. They just wanted to make sure that everything is then secured via that condition to make sure that the flow rates are secured so that it wouldn't result in additional flooding off-site.
And a very quick supplementary, just to finish that point about the biodiversity. I think it's page 51. There's a considerable number of trees to be removed, and then there's going to be a large number of trees that are going to be planted. And clearly, that's really good news for the ecology and green therapy and breaking up the hard, dense packing of what we're getting in terms of this built environment. But I am concerned because obviously trees, when new trees which are planted, take some time to get to maturity and deliver the ecological value. My quick calculation here, the back of my fag packet, if you like, suggests that by removing the said trees, we're going to lose the benefits of that, and then it's going to take some time before the maturity of the new trees kicks in. So, is there a way that we can consider phasing the removal of the trees? My first question, and the second part of that is when we come to put the new trees in, can there be more mature trees rather than saplings? I presume we'll get to the conditioning conversation about that.
That's certainly something we can discuss when it comes to implementing the various conditions. So the trees that are to be removed, as you saw on site, they tend to be Leyland type style trees, so their ecological importance is generally limited. They're not very popular trees with many protected species. So most of the trees on site that are being retained are native species and are mature. So there will be some sort of compensation in that regard, and additional planting in place, but we can require further details via condition for the sizes of plants to be confirmed. We do have a condition requiring the implementation of the landscaping plans, and there is a condition requiring further details of the local area of play. So it may be something that you can put forward to confirm details of sizing of plants at the appropriate time.
Councillor Lamy.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to ensure that all dwellings have an electric vehicle charging point. Can we put that in? That's not already in.
So at present, there isn't a requirement for all dwellings to have a vehicle charging point, as I understand it. Then there is an understanding that there would be a significant amount of vehicle charging points. But I'm unclear on how many precisely there would be across the site, but there is a requirement that some are provided. We can, or you could put forward a condition at the appropriate time to indicate which properties would have the vehicle charging available and what part of, or if any are being proposed for the visitor parking as well at the appropriate time, if that's what you would like to do.
I'm quite happy with that, and also we've conditioned on other estates that they'd be electric only, no gas. Have you thought through that particular point for the sustainability?
So as I said previously, at the moment we haven't conditioned anything beyond what is allowed under CP11. As the general building regulations have come forward, they are requiring higher and higher standards. So under CP11, I would expect the details of any additional solar panels, air source heat pumps, other sustainable heating and cooling details would form part of that discharge of condition application. So it would come forward under what has already been included in the conditions list.
Thank you. So I would like to consider putting that into the conditions when the appropriate time comes.
Or if you'd like to think of exact wording for that, Councillor Lamy. I mean, are you going to ask for a percentage of dwellings to have electric?
No, I'd
Charging
like to ask
points.
for all of them, because
All of
otherwise you're putting people at disadvantage then, because if they have to use public
That's
charging
not a
points.
policy
They would have to.
requirement, so I don't think we can do that actually. Sorry, Donna.
So the way I would recommend dealing with this is that we ask them to show us which parking spaces have the space on that layout to install electric vehicle charging. It isn't a policy requirement at this time. We tend to do it in Winchester because of the air quality supplementary planning document, and a lot of developers are starting to deliver these things anyway because of market demand, but there's no harm in asking the developer to show us which ones will be electric vehicle charging points.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really concerned that people get a reasonable price for their electricity that they're charging their vehicles for, rather than having to use a public one, which would just encourage people to use electric vehicles.
Yeah, I think the market requirement is going to be such that people will expect these days to have electric vehicle charging points anyway, but it's not something that we can require at this stage, unfortunately, Councillor Lamy, but we can ask. Okay, so we will include a proposal for that condition at the end. Councillor Lee?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I should have be my first question. I wonder if we can just go back to some of the issues raised by the Parish Council and Councillor Wallace about the number of houses and the fact that this area has exceeded the local plan requirement. And then I'd also like to pick up on the affordable housing issue, which clearly is extremely disappointing given the demand and the need in our current economic crisis. So I wonder if the officers can perhaps help me with that as to why there seems to be a difference of opinion about whether we have or haven't and why we've got to where we've got to.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Although there is quite a lot in the report about viability and the reasoning for the reduction in the percentage of affordable housing, but Mrs. Chapman.
Thank you. So in regard to the 250 dwellings, the general local plan has allocated approximately 250 dwellings, which is shown in this plan here. So over the 4 policy areas, so WC 1, 2, 3 and 4, that would have provided approximately 250 dwellings. As you're aware, it's we usually agree sort of 10% above or below, and that was allocated within the local plan. What we cannot allocate is windfall applications, which I understand the parish council have been included in their counting. So while I understand that the overall plan says approximately 250, that is in relation specifically to the allocations from the local plan. It doesn't take into consideration any additional windfall applications, which the parish council have done. So in general, there would be a general uplift, and they all contribute to our 5-year land supply in general. And then in regard to the affordable housing and the viability, a number of viability application reports have been submitted, and they clearly lay out all the various considerations. And I think it highlights that the planning practice guidance does allow for approximately 15 to 20% developer profit as standard for applications. In this case, the developer is taking less than that so that he can provide additional on-site benefits such as more open space, a lesser amount of dwellings and some affordable housing. I understand that it's 10% is significantly less than what we would usually ask for, but I think in this case the viability has shown that a 10% is rather generous in this case.
Very good. Thank you very much, Rose. Difficult report to go through, complicated, so thank you for all that. Okay, I think oh, Councillor Reid, I beg your pardon. That's okay, your last question, thank you.
Chairman, one of the questions asked at the site meeting, which I just remembered, was regarding to the commercial building being moved from the original scheme forward to the edge of the road. We were told that we would be shown plans of the planting in that area, which included, I think, some trees were mentioned. It doesn't look a great deal of room. Can I just see that plan?
Thank you. So this plan probably shows it the best. It's this middle street plan here. So there is some planting along the front with some trees shown as well.
Can we know the space that is actually planted in?
So the building itself tapers. So you can see it at the point of the cursor here. So it tapers slightly to allow for visibility displays. When zoomed in, it's approximately 0.5 metre. So it is a limited space, but there is still sufficient space for some planting.
Proper trees that will grow in that type of confined space.
They're more likely to be a native species hedge. So if some of the species within the hedge can go up, then it would allow them to do that. But then we would also want it in line with the visibility displays to maintain any visibility, so it wouldn't be higher than I think it's 0.6 meters is required by highways.
That's right, because anyone emerging from the existing property will have a difficult job, or could have a difficult job, of seeing to the right because of the corner of that structure, as well as the hedge. And there's only a very narrow footway at that point on that location. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for raising that, Councillor Reid. I think we've now moved to starting debate. So members, debate. Councillor Lee.
When can we discuss the conditions?
So Councillor Lee wanted an extra condition about electric charging points.
Yeah, I've made a note of that, and when we get to the resolution at the end, we can look at that to be included in the vote. So that is there. It would just simply say the plan to be submitted to and approved by the local planning authority, showing parking spaces that will be serviced by electric vehicle charging points.
Members, do we wish to agree to include that new condition? Agreed? Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you.
At the same time, look at a fixed crossing point close to where the new footpath for the children is going to be on the highways.
Chair, I think the thing to say on that is in the heads of terms, there's an awful lot of things that we've got to liaise with the county council about. Obviously, Rose has already done that, and they have got some limitations on some of the suggestions in terms of installing improvements, that there's a big cost involved and it has to be fully justified. But there's certainly more opportunities looking at Section 278 agreements, which is where they're going to have to agree the link of the footpath, the new footpath, and how it links onto the road and the footway there, and how that's safe. So there will be further conversations that we can have, at least trying to, I suppose, influence them with those areas. But we do have to look carefully at their standards and the costs of those things.
That means we can look at it as a condition.
We can't condition it, sadly, but we can express the view of the committee that we would much prefer to have a Pelican crossing there than what is existing. I think that's as far as we can go.
It's entirely in their remit to make those decisions, but so the heads of terms in the league agreement will be looking at the traffic regulation orders, that where the parking spaces are on the road, the travel plan, the travel improvement. So there's an awful lot there where we can look comprehensively at ensuring that that footway is safe for the children that will be crossing it. That's the remit entirely of the county council.
So we think it's covered by those planning obligations and agreements. But that the view of the committee is that ideally it should be a Pelican crossing, so perhaps we can express that to the county council in an ideal world. Thank you. So, debate. Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Well, various points. I think, as Councillor Wallace said, there is an agreement that the site does need to be redeveloped. And at the moment, I don't think it does very much for Waltham Chase as you drive through and see rather a mess, quite frankly. And I think that feeling is reinforced when you wander around on the site. We get a lot of calls and letters in the newspaper about developing brownfield sites, first of all. And we have one here. It's in a dire state. There's diesel tanks, oil tanks, and petrol and what have you underneath. And obviously, these add a huge cost to the development, which is why developers tend to go for greenfield sites. But I think at the same time, you cannot get the same amount of demand as much as one might from a developer on the greenfield site if they're on a brownfield site, i.e. affordable homes and the rest of it. I think the issue with viability, it's always quite a difficult one because you tend to feel that perhaps a certain amount of wool is being pulled over the eyes. However, there was a report from a QS saying that they'd gone through the costs of the sorting out the pollution, and he reckoned they were valid and so on and so on. So I think we have to take that as a given and accept that you're not going to get the same level of affordable homes. I think the architecture on the site is not particularly inspiring, but it's not hugely worse than lots of other sites, I'm afraid to say. I think one has to be very careful not to judge the quality of sites on the density, because actually having low density doesn't necessarily make for a very good site. There are lots of things that work against it, you know, walking to school, access and so on. And some of the most expensive properties in the county are very densely built up. I'm concerned about the later phases and the earlier phases not being built to the same standards. I know Taylor Woodrow have debated this at length and realised that when you get a site and the early people who bought their houses early on suddenly realise they have to retrofit and it's going to cost them 10,000 quid, but their neighbour has already, it's been given to them, so to speak. That's a sort of political point developers need to think about. Obviously, you want as high a standard as possible. There's the question of the sewage issue, and obviously that I think the development phases have to be rigidly tied into the new improvements. I thought the play area was singularly unimaginative, and I appreciate the developer's point about the costs of clearing up the pollution, but I don't think you can keep playing that card all the time and saying, well, no, we can't afford 5,000 quid for better play equipment. But if these points can be agreed in the conditions, I'm prepared to accept this development proposal. I would ask though, there's a lot of effort being put into bird boxes and so on. Could we ensure that there's hedgehog holes in the garden fences? Thank you.
Crucial. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would endorse pretty much everything that Councillor Gordon-Smith has said in that quite rich, detailed contribution. Thank you. This is, it seems to me, a modest proposal with all kinds of things that could be excellent, but maybe good enough. I particularly am disappointed by the inability to accept the direction of travel and the aspirations in CP11 regarding sustainable buildings. And I hope that that will be possible as the site develops. I think, however, we have to recognise that there are real constraints in working on a contaminated brownfield site, which is on a semi-rural, semi-suburban location where the very high land values that you might have in a city centre would contribute less towards the cost of development. So there are also good things about it. I know the biodiversity, the network of paths, the development of plenty of new trees and some green space. So essentially, I can't see material planning reasons why this should be rejected, and I will vote in favour.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I first of all say congratulations to the Parish Council. 40 pages of this report is from their contribution. All the time I've sat on this planning committee, which is a little time now, I have never seen a parish council put forward that amount of detail before, and I hope some of the questions at some point will be answered by the authority. I do have a problem, and I must admit, the first problem is the play area. I think it's rather imaginative that you've 2 bits of wood and 3 or 4 stones will keep people happy. What people seem to have forgotten is there are 2 swells, one either side. I think the children are going to have a whale of a time in the swells. To me, that is a little dangerous because that particular play area is designed for the very young. Now, the very young are very inquisitive and they will want to know what a swale is when they get in there and get wet. We all know what's going to say. It's also a little bit isolated, being right at the northern end of the proposed developments. If it was going to be a toddler play area, then one would expect it more in the centre of the proposed construction. I'm also a little concerned with the affordable housing issue. I do understand that the cost of cleaning the site up are going to be astronomical. Walking around there yesterday, it was, I wouldn't like to have driven my car into that rear yard, to be quite honest. Those people who did, I hope they're all right. It is a problem, but I don't think it should come totally at the expense of affordable housing, which we as a district, and in particular, this community itself, have already shown there is an urgent need for this type of affordable housing. The other thing that worries me is that Shedfield, in the past, and possibly in the present, may not be party to the 106 agreement, which is frightening. I'm still trying to understand how commuted sums can go from one parish council to another, of which the actual land is within a particular different parish. Yeah, I just don't understand that one at all. We've heard from the parish council also that they are currently overdeveloped. I know the tune of that because my particular patch is overdeveloped by 93 houses, of which Winchester I'm not addressing to the way the parish council would like to, and we are doing our own neighbourhood plan, which might be overseen by Winchester and altered much against the parish's wish. I do find that there are problems on this site which I'm having difficulty with. The reason I mentioned the crossing is because the very nature of this proposed site is right to the south end of the community. 2/3 of the community, approx, live on the opposite side of the road. So any children coming from that area have to cross that main road. At the moment, they may well be taken in there by their parents in a car because there's a lovely car park you can park in. That option of route to school is possibly going to disappear. Chairman, I'm finding this difficult. I will listen to other members, but at the moment I'm in a position where I'm quite wondering whether the officer's recommendation is the correct recommendation for this particular site.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just listening to Councillor Reid, I too have concerns regarding it being on such a busy road, this development. I know the area well. There's lots of HGV lorries go down that site. So I'm concerned about the noise and vibration that it will have on the new housing, and also the crossing to the school. Before I was a councillor, I was a crossing patrol person. I'm well aware that possibly there isn't one on that road, and how children will be crossing the road as it is going to get busier. I do have concerns. Also, the closest local shop is quite a distance from this development. that also concerns me. And Solomon's Lane, the way the cars park there now, nearly right up to the junction, that is also a concern. So I still haven't quite made my mind up on this at the moment.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, I'd like to echo the previous two councillors' comments. There's no doubt about it. Developing a brownfield site is better than tackling a development on greenfield, clearly. But there's a whole list of things here which just do not feel right, whether it's road safety, travel plan, all jam tomorrow, play area, reduction in employment, which we've touched on, the drainage and surface water problem, as highlighted by Councillor Wallace, is manifestly a problem which, again, is jammed tomorrow. I'm reading the Southern Water Report here. I'm looking at our motion to protect our local rivers and waterways. I'm looking at particular resolutions about we should have information is clearly and transparently set out. I'm not seeing that. So that is concerning. Has already been mentioned about funds going to other areas. Design, well, yeah, as Councillor Gordon-Smith said, this is a densely packed area. It is difficult, it is challenging. And we've talked about the sustainable credentials. Again, nothing buttoned down there. Green credentials, well, yeah, there's some positive aspects there. And clearly, if we could phase tree removal and more mature trees and so on, that would certainly help. So again, I'm ambivalent at the moment. I haven't made my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe you've already spoken, Councillor Laming, in debate. No? Well, you can go next, but after me. My view of this, it's a difficult site to develop. It's a brownfield site, but we all are keen to develop brownfield sites. I think the difficulty of this is clear in the fact that this is, I think, the third iteration that's come forward. Life has changed quite a lot since our original plan was written, which is why we're almost at the process of introducing our new local plan. CP11 has been significantly superseded by new building regulations. So whatever it says in CP11, builders will have to do better than that now, and that is conditioned by building regulations. But also we will be looking, we have asked for details of sustainable heating and solar panels and all those aspects, which will be coming forward, and we will be holding the developer to the highest possible standards on that. We've looked at the viability issue, and I think that we should welcome the fact that despite, and we visited the site, we know how difficult it's going to be to clear away all that acres of concreting and old buildings and everything else that's on the site, not to mention the pollution, the contamination of the site as well. So that is inevitably going to have a significant impact on the viability of any sites. And so we should be grateful there is some, at least, affordable housing included. The road is a straight road. It is a 30 miles an hour speed limit, and I would urge the police and the parish council to do as much as they can to ensure that that speed limit is kept to. But in terms of planning reasons for turning something down, you have to, that is not, that is not a planning reason. The fact that people break the law whilst driving past the site. The flooding has been covered by conditions and will be looked at very carefully. It's next to the school, so another good reason to deal with the seriously contaminated area right next to the school. The footpaths and the permeability of the site are all very good, and I'm very pleased to see all of that. What else have I said? The county council. So again, not a planning issue. Things that we are concerned about are not issues that we as the planning committee have control over. The decision of the county council about the width of the pavement, the quality of the crossings, that is for the county to decide. We can simply involve them in that discussion and pass on their own concerns, but it's not a planning reason for turning it down. The play area, again, what has been suggested is a suggestion. Again, that is conditioned. So our officers can look again at what is proposed for the local area of play. And if we don't think it's adequate, we can require an improvement in those provisions. So that is, again, is not something that you can turn this application down on the basis, because it is covered by our extensive conditions, planning obligations and other agreements that have been covered in the report and extensively this morning by our officer. So I am content that this is a good application, the best we can get in the difficult circumstances. I completely understand the concerns of the parish council, but things have moved on since the original local plan, and that has been reflected in this new planning application, which I will be happy to support. Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to what my colleagues have said and taken on board a lot of the comments. I think there are some very good points to this application, but I also think there are some things that we really do concern us. One of the points that we can't take into consideration really is the viability, because that comes down to what the developers paid for the land, and that's outside our control. What I am concerned about is the lack of affordable housing. In villages around the district, people have a job to live in the village where they were born, and we should actually have that, take that into account as well. So I'm still struggling with this one on many levels.
So if there are no more contributions to debate, we move to the decision. So this application is recommended for approval. Can I see all those in favour of approving this application, please?
5, Chair.
6, I believe.
6, Chair.
Those against?
3, Chair.
So that application is approved. And we will now take a break of 15 minutes and return at 12 minutes to 12. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's resume today's planning committee. As you can see from the update sheet, item number 7 has been withdrawn by the applicant. So we now move to item number 8, which is an application for a temporary rural workers dwelling, agricultural building, forest school and ancillary works. And our presenting officer in South Wonston, and our presenting officer is Catherine Watson. If you'd like to give us your presentation, please, Kat.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is shown here. To the left, so to the west, you'll see the settlement boundary of South Wonston. To the south is the Lower Road, Oxdrove public right-of-way. And here we have the aerial photograph. So the bungalow at the bottom is not part of the site. The red line goes around the curtilage of this bungalow, but this just gives an idea of the site as it was before being developed. Here we have the site plan. So this is towards the top of the north of the site. So we've got hedging around the curtilage. At the top here, the rectangular structure is the mushroom production facility. The round structure is the temporary rural workers dwelling, which is in the form of a dome. Then to the right, we've got the other rectangular shape, which is ground mounted solar PV panels. Just below that, we've got septic tank and drainage field. And then south of that, we've got an area of market garden with a polytunnel and a greenhouse. The left-hand side, near the top left corner, we've got the parking area. And then there's a few other ancillary buildings in the form of sheds. So here is the plan showing the temporary rural workers dwelling. So it's a dome shape, and this just shows the circumference. And this shows the interior. So the top image shows the ground floor layout, the semicircular area is the mezzanine. And at the bottom, you'll see in profile the mezzanine and the steps that lead up to that, and that's for the purposes of sleeping. Here we have some photographs of the site. So on the left-hand side, you'll see in amongst the bushes and trees, the dwelling, which is already on site. The right-hand side, on the left-hand side of the photo, you've got the side of the dwelling, and then there's a shed. Then on the left-hand side, this is the main gate into the site, and there's parking area. The white structure is the mushroom growing facility. On the right-hand side, this is an area that's used as part of the forest school. And again, both of these photos show the area used for the forest school. So there's some benches, tables, and general sort of paraphernalia associated with the forest school use. Here we have an area of the site which has currently been used for growing vegetables. And we can also see the part of the site which has been cleared. So we've got bare earth here, that's been cleared. It was formerly, excuse me, grassland, grass and shrubs. And that ends the presentation. Thank you, Chair. The recommendation is to refuse based upon the reasons for refusal as given in the officer's report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now turn to public speaking, and we have 3 supporters John and Holly Wright and Graham Cole. If you'd all like to come forward, I'm afraid you'll have to share the 3 minutes between you. Is one of you going to speak and then the others be available to answer questions? The questions at the end. Lovely. Thank you very much. And you have 3 minutes from when you start speaking, and you know how to switch on the microphone. Thank you.
Chairman, members, there is no better place to help people reconnect with nature than a piece of land that has been left alone for 35 years. The learning possibilities are endless, and this is the perfect place for a forest school and to develop a fungarium. There is no land like it in the surrounding area, let alone that we have access to. We own the land, so there are no associated costs. It is both the only location and the best location available to us. Our forest school, Nature Play Business, operates under the 28-day rule. It started in 2021, which is publicly available information. Due to its popularity, we are merely seeking an extension to allow for us to operate year-round. Regarding the mushroom enterprise, we are surprised that despite our offer to cover the cost of the council, officers decided that they did not need their own agricultural consultant. As a result, officers have made a very serious error in deciding that mushroom production is an industrial enterprise. Officers should have been aware of established case law, Millington versus Secretary of State and Shrewsbury and Action BC 1999, which confirms that producing a product using plants grown on the unit is wholly an agricultural process. Thus, the basis of the refusal of mushroom production enterprise is wrong as a matter of law. Had officers sought proper advice, this serious error would have been avoided. The application for the temporary rural workers dwelling is to be assessed using the 3 tests in policy DM11. Officers agree that the first test, intention and ability, is met. On the financial test, officers do not challenge our figures, but argue there is no market data. Of course, the reason for this is that it is a new product in an emerging market. The way to test the plan is to grant a 3-year trial period in accordance with government policy. Officers also claim the third test, the functional test, is not met because it's an industrial process, which does not need to be located in the countryside. As mentioned, this is an agricultural enterprise on my own family land. What is so unreasonable about that? Of course, we will deal with nutrient mitigation, ecology, and drainage issues in the usual way. All of these can be dealt with by conditions.
Good afternoon, Chairman.
Would you like to just switch on your microphone? Thank you.
I'm Graham Cole. I'm an organic horticulturalist and ecologist for over 4 decades. Mushroom farming is the second most intensive behind strawberries. Cultivation is a year round, and during the fruiting stage, just a few hours can be the difference between prime and spoiled. We are surprised that the case officer admitted to report to members a letter from a very similar business, which is 4 years ahead of Mindful Mushrooms. In the letter, Bristol Fungarium founder Tom Baxter confirmed his company generated 1.3 million revenue by year 3 with 9 people employed. The letter also confirms that it's essential to live on site as the company would be otherwise unable to operate.
Thank you. Thank you for stopping at the right moment.
There was one more paragraph, but I ran out.
Well, maybe we can tease that out in questions of clarification, members. Councillor Lee.
Thank you for that. I wonder if you could just expand. You said no market data, 3-year trial plan in accordance with government policy. Can you just expand on that for me, please?
Yeah, so functional mushrooms, which is the market we're going off, has been around in Asia for thousands of years. It's very new in the Western world. It's a novel business. It's not a novel product. Most of the companies who operate in this space source powdered products from China, and they stick a logo on it. They can operate from a industrial facility, but there's no market data. They're not sharing their revenue, their profit, their everything, etc. But we do have this letter that confirms after 3 years of operation, 1.3 million revenue was generated. We also have some good feedback. We started selling our product, and in accordance with government policy, there's a 3-year trial period to have a temporary rural workers dwelling. I understand that there's subject to an application at the end of that 3-year trial period. Has the test been met?
Right, thank you.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the school and how you operate and what your aims are on that, please.
I'll let Holly answer that. Holly is a trained forest school practitioner and it takes the lead on that.
Hello, I'm Holly. I'm a level 3 forest school practitioner, and I've been running Nature Play Business, obviously with John. The connection to nature and children is like paramount for not only for the health and the love of our planet, but for our children as well. It's scientifically proven that children that are playing within mud and getting themselves connected in that way is improving their immune system. The space itself is very natural. We don't try not to have too many plastic things at all. So it's very natural with woods and utilising the resources that we have that we were able to get. We are very connected to the earth and the moon, so we bring these into our sessions and allow the children to learn about the species that are around them. So knowing what trees that they're playing in, we have a lot of hawthorn, as it's quite a young woodland, and a hawthorn it's basically a hedgerow, so it likes to lean. So we have all these beautiful arches, which makes it quite ethereal and magic for the children. We truly do believe that the fairies live there too, so that keeps the magic alive for the children too. And as a facilitator, I allow them to be totally self-directed. I have my lesson plans obviously all in place, but I don't get too upset if that doesn't go through as I'd planned, because as long as they are getting some type of learning about themselves or learning with other children around them, depending on the session, preschool children tend to just like to play on their own and have children around them. We have a mud kitchen where they play constantly with water and figuring out, like going through their schemas and putting water into different pots and pans, making fairy cakes or dinosaur poo cakes, whatever it might be. We allow children to be children. And we're also offering an opportunity for the caregivers or the parents that are coming with them and the grandparents that are coming with them, which is really wonderful to see, that they are in a calm environment, and the children that do come to us that might have any additional needs, such as ADHD or autism, they are finding that they are calm in our environment, whereas the school environment is really not working for them because of the walls and the pressure of being around that many children. That answers
Thank
your
you.
question.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Laming, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, please. Are they there for a long period of time, sort of normal school terms, or is it just a short-term basis?
So on a Wednesday, it's just a one-off that they can book onto. So it's an hour-and-a-half session in the morning with their caregiver. But we also offer a forest school. So that's just our play group. But on Friday, we offer a forest school, which is a 6-week programme, which lasts for 2 hours for each session, and it's on a weekly basis. The forest school ethos believes that over a long-term period, allowing the children to be in these natural spaces, it can really improve their mental health and physical ability with their motor skills and stuff like that. And love for nature being the most important part. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps I could ask, I think the forest school sounds wonderful. I think the mushroom business sounds great, but the key problem here is you've put a new dwelling in the countryside without enough justification. What is your justification for having a new dwelling in the countryside?
Thank you for the question. I didn't want to be personal because I know that personal situations are not to account, but in answer to your question with honour and honesty, I lost my job coming out the end of the COVID pandemic. And we also had a house that we owned. It got flooded, it got dry rot, which wasn't covered by insurance. There's no better way to eat for your savings when you're trying to rent somewhere, you own somewhere where your tenants move out, and the bank puts your interest rate up by 3-fold. So we had to sell the house for a song. And we don't have enough money to buy a new house. We don't have the financial records to get a mortgage or to rent. So we had to make that decision to move on to the land. But that aside, that is not the reason we are living there. We are living there because there's an essential need. We've seen a gap in the market of the mushroom enterprise, and we think we can make it successful.
but you haven't explained why you, I mean, I understand your personal circumstances and you have my huge sympathy, but what is the business, the actual reason that you have to live on site, that you can't live somewhere else and go to your place of work as most people do?
Regarding the essential need. So the essential need is that, as Graham mentioned, mushroom farming is a very intensive business. You have to attend to, like we're making functional mushroom tinctures. This is our first product. There's processes involved with that, with extraction equipment to draw out the beneficial compounds. This extraction equipment often has to be dealt with at all hours of the day, 24 hours a day, sometimes late at night. And mushroom cropping is year round. As Graham mentioned, the difference between a few hours can be a spoiled and a prime mushroom. Also, if there is what's called a spore drop, so as mushrooms, fruits reach maturity, they release spores. If those spores are released in our growing environment, the whole crop is spoiled. The whole thing needs to be pulled out. The whole thing needs to be deep cleaned. So there is an essential need with the processes that we are operating to live there. Our personal circumstances dictated that we had to move faster than waited. I think we have had this application in for quite a long time. We were waiting, but we had to make a move. We were effectively homeless. And there's many reasons for the essential need to live on site as laid out in the report, which I'm sure all of you have read in detail. The business plan, yes, we are storing ethanol on site to make our tinctures. That will be stored separately. There are security concerns, for our site. So there are a good number of reasons. I shan't repeat all of them. They're all in the report.
Thank you. Any other questions, members, for Councillor Lee?
Can you just clarify for me, services to this site, is that the full suite of services that you're receiving at the moment?
Yes, so we installed a borehole. So we don't take, we take a very small amount of water. It's certainly within, I think, 22,000 litres that is permitted for an unlicensed borehole. We have a ground-mounted solar array, which is 9 square metres, which is a permitted right. The application is for twice that size. We haven't installed that yet. And we have installed we're working with a packaged biodigester plant, which produces natural gas. That only works in certain temperatures. So we have installed a septic tank. The septic tank has a drainage field. It sits above the water table. So there is zero risk of any nitrogen or phosphate runoff.
Right, thank you. And in terms of the employment on site, can you just say something about the numbers? Is it just the team here, or is it bigger than this? And
so we're very embryonic. I have behind me my business partner Chris on the mushroom enterprise. Holly and I launched the forest school together. Graham is our horticultural advisor, friend, and volunteer. We have a volunteer program. We are very embryonic in our business. In year one with our forest school, we turned over £17,000. But we are very embryonic. But as the letter, which was omitted to report, suggested that Bristol Fungarium, after 3 years, employed 9 people. So there is definitely a chance to employ people. And my background is working with impact investing in social enterprises. I would have a tendency to employ people that are less likely to be employed as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to come back to the school, if we may. You've given a rich description of what it's like, but how about some numbers? I mean, how many children come each week? How many might be on site at the same time, and how do they get there?
How do they get there? Okay, so I'll start with the play group. So the play group is obviously we run like quite seasonal, and obviously being one-offs if they do come. Some people come every week, and they come in all weathers, which is fantastic. Summertime we're a lot more busy than obviously the winter time. We try and have a cap of like 15 children to 20 children that will come with their caregivers. Most of them walk to us or cycle. The parish council asked us to put in our own car park, so we did that. We wouldn't have otherwise done that because it was a large cost to us and time. But they park in the village, which is free parking in the local car park. Our forest school, again, we have a maximum of 12. I do this because well, I believe, like, as the facilitator, for me, I need to be addressing the questions that the children are asking, and obviously allowing them to, whatever their direction is. Maybe we might see a bird of prey, for example, then the whole session might change, and we might all go and gather some sticks, and we might talk about the size of a bird of prey's nest, and then we'll make that, and then we can then further on that conversation. So it's like a deep dive into nature and how they fit into it as well. So we do talk about, like, you know, not dropping rubbish and why that's important as well. Hope that addresses your question.
Can I just add, it's important to make differentiation. It's called a forest school. We call it a forest school. This is not a school. Yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and actually before the session today, I looked up the Forest Schools Association website, which I think you're not associated with, but so that was a bit of background, and I can see you're doing something small scale.
Can I?
Sorry, I'll just ask you a question, then please add to it. So thank you. So you've told me that maximum 12 children on the site at any one time, but I guess you must have a record of how many people come.
Yeah.
And so
we go through a booking.
So on an average week, or however you want to give the figures, how many kids are going to?
So on an average week, let's, discount winter when numbers drop. Obviously, you'd have a stay and play session for a maximum 15 people. It might be 8, it might be 15, and then on a forest school session, you would have 12. So that's 27 children a week plus their caregivers. So you could double that to 54, and that would be each week. We do occasionally have birthday parties as well. Those are the typical birthday party package we offer is for 12 children. Some people have more. I think the most we've ever had is 25 children. Does that help?
Yes, I became involved in the spring with this, and I've just been so impressed to see the results, what happens with the children, the joy, the music, the singing. I just feel it's such a wonderful local, communal quality, which South Wonston doesn't have. I really feel it's adding to South Wonston as an outsider.
Just to
Sorry, I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to come for Councillor Gordon-Smith. You've got a question.
Yeah, I just wondered what happens when it rains.
We dance. We dance. We call in the sun gods, and we like to play rain tag. I mean, with any like parent or caregiver, they will dress their child appropriately for the weather, and hopefully they'll check the weather forecast before coming out if they're only booking onto a single session. But when it comes to forest school, if it is a yellow weather warning, I will then take that call on the day of the session. We won't cancel with heavy rains, we will just take it outside of the wooded area, but we will cancel if it's high winds.
Councillor Lee, may I just ask my question and then you can come in? Thank you. I've got a question about one of our reasons for refusal is about nutrients and the deposition of such like. You've got a septic tank, I see, in the plans. Is that adequate to cope with all those children coming along? And
we've actually got a compost toilet for our customers. Yeah.
The septic tank system that was installed is suitable for a house of 6 people. The toilet that leads to the septic tank is not used by any members of the public who come to our site.
They will use the compost.
They use the compost toilet. The sessions are anywhere from 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So, most people don't use toilet, but if they do need to, it's there and they use the compost toilet.
We also are quite open to wild weeing because that's quite normal.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. You stole my question, actually. But I have another one, if I may. Habitat loss and impact on biodiversity. Clearly, people on site, a lot of activity, and you've got some works going on. So one of the concerns by the planning team is that there's no assessment of that. So would you like to just explain how intrusive you are?
Yeah, so this is a site with no tree preservation orders, no site-specific interest. We have cleared an area. It is very small. The area for development has been about 1/2 an acre versus a 4.5 acre field. The biggest area of clearing that we have done is for it's not a market garden. I know we called it such. It's a kitchen garden because it's 1/4 of an acre. It's not of commercial scale, nor will it be. It's merely an extension of our existing services. That was actually what led to us doing that was a grant from Winchester City Council, the Rural Enterprise Prosperity Fund, who gave us a grant and gave us a green light to clear that area. There was a good deal of reporting that went as part of that application. It went across multiple desks, it went to a committee meeting, and it went through a legal team. And I also introduced the case officer to that grant team as well. So I assumed that they would be sharing information across. It is not our intention to clear other areas of the site. What is special about this site is it's been left to nature for so long. If anyone has an interest in permaculture or forest garden, it is already a forest garden. It has medicinal herbs and crops that can be useful. We want to leave a large part of this site. We have already installed a wildflower meadow. We have already installed a pond. We have put log piles and bug hotels all around to increase the biodiversity already. We will do much more. We want to do a large pond as recommended from our ecology report. We were already going to do that. And apart from making a few clearings where people can go and sit, we will leave a large part of the site untouched.
I think that's covered that question. Thank you. Any more questions of clarification? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. As you've mentioned the children involved, are you Ofsted recognised?
We're not Ofsted recognised, no. We've decided not to do that as such at the moment because we are doing it under 2 hours. And the parents are with them. I've spoken to Ofsted and the additional things that we offer for the slightly older children, we never have them for, I think it's a lot more than, I think it's 14 sessions a year, which we are way under for that. At the moment, I'm obviously a level 3 forest school facilitator. I've been working within schools as well. Forest school has become this like popular tag word, and it's been going into schools. They are not doing forest school. They are really not doing forest school. Forest school is about embracing and engaging with the child and the whole child, not 30 children and telling them to sit down and just listen to them. It's about allowing children to have their voices as well and to discuss things openly.
Thank you very much. You may return to your seats. Thank you very much. So, Catherine, do we have any, do you want to update us on anything following the public contribution?
Thank you, Chair. There's just a couple of things. Firstly, to do with the mushroom growing enterprise. As you'll see from my report, it's like I said, it's a more of a industrial process, and I understand that the applicants disagree with this, but I just wanted to bring members' attention to, in terms of the need for a countryside location, page 167, paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where the applicant's planning statement actually states that the mushroom growing enterprise could be regarded as footloose and could reasonably be located anywhere. So I would just direct members to that, for their consideration. And with the ecology, the problem was that first of all, not enough information had been given as to what was on the site and how that's changed. And then the second issue was the fact that the development, so the construction of the house, the connection of the services, the construction of the cesspit, etc., was undertaken, and so the site was fundamentally changed from what it was before. So I think our ecologists wanted more information on what was there before, what it's like now, and what ecological measures, enhancement measures or mitigation measures have already been taken, and what would be taken in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, do we have questions on the report? Councillor Lee.
Thank you for that. So would it be your opinion that if some of these issues could be answered, we'd be getting a long way to satisfying a move to approving the use of the site in the way that's laid out?
Thank you, Chair. No, that's a small part of the application. If there are no other issues, and the ecology issue reason for refusal was the only one, I'm sure that something could be done to address that by further surveys and mitigation and so on. But there are another 5 reasons for refusal, and so resolving the ecology issue in itself would not lead to a positive recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Laney.
The issue was brought up of a 3-year trial period. Have you considered that?
Thank you, Chair. You mean the three-year dwelling temporary? Yes, that's what has been applied for. That's what's been built. So the policy CP11, DM11, states that they, if they get permission for a temporary dwelling for a period of 3 years, so that's something that's been considered, and as you'll have seen, because of the type of function that they require the dwelling for, there wasn't enough justification for the need for that dwelling. But if it were to be granted permission, the dwelling would be temporary for 3 years, and then they'd have to come in again for full planning permission to make it permanent. So that's just how that policy works. So it is currently without consent, but with a view to being, if the recommendation were to approve, then it would be there for a temporary period of 3 years before planning permission could be sought for a permanent dwelling there.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Are there any more questions for our officer? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to reconcile. I appreciate Wales is a different country and so on, but you do read and see about cases where a couple or a family have been able to use forest areas. They're off grid, and they seem to be there for a considerable amount of time, more than 3 years. Is there no latitude that we can use to provide the opportunities which they're trying to achieve? Are there any other precedents that we might want to look at to assist their endeavours?
Yeah, Chair, if I could just summarise, the biggest problem that we've got is not the forestry school. There would definitely be a community justification for something like that, and indeed quite a few of those things don't need planning permission, such as the works that were given a grant for clearing the land. The biggest issue is that somebody wants to live on this land for really small scale proposal. Normally when we grant workers' dwellings, it's for really large scale agriculture of hundreds and hundreds of birthing farm animals, that sort of thing. That is the scale that we would normally want to be looking at allowing people living on the countryside. And in this case, we question whether this is even agriculture. We've looked at some of the case law and some of what other planning authorities are doing, and it's really fact and degree whether you consider that this facility is something that needs to be on the land and sort of have an agricultural, horticultural type function to allow them to live there and every day needing to attend it. And the secondary thing is that there's a car park in the countryside. All these children are being driven out into the countryside, which just isn't sustainable. And so we would expect a better travel plan to be facilitating that, not driving into the countryside. It's something that's we'd obviously want to reduce. So there's 2 things there. That helps.
And now we move to debate, members. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I have great sympathy for the applicant's personal circumstances and the forest and school and mushroom production business. However, this development is contrary to a whole raft of the Council's planning policies. In fact, I've counted 10 planning policy contraventions and 2 regulation contraventions relating to the soil and nutrient protection without mitigation. Quite simply, it is an inappropriate and unjustified development in the countryside. This business is in the wrong place for this particular application, and I will be voting with the officer's recommendation to refuse permission.
Anybody else? Councillor Gordon-Smith?
I rather agree with Councillor Cunningham that the big problem is a dwelling appearing in the countryside. And I was very charmed by what you said. And I've never heard fairies brought up as a topic in a planning meeting before. But I think I have to agree with the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Lee?
Yes, the disconnect between people and nature is manifest, absolutely. I mean, the State of Nature report recently indicating the constant decline of nature is significant. And connecting people with nature is a must. So I'm fully on board with that, and I think it's laudable what you're doing. Unfortunately, I think there is planning issues here which you are fighting against your aspirations. And so although I'd like to support you, I feel as currently constituted, it's going to be very difficult for me to do that. Thank you.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. This is quite a different one as far as I'm concerned, because if there is case law, which I believe there is, that this is agriculture, and agricultural businesses sometimes need people on site 24 hours a day. So therefore, I listen to what has been said, and I think that's the essence of what we're looking at. I think the whole business is worth the experimentation of 3 years. I think the temporary dwelling is reasonable, and I think the forest school is a delight for the local children. And I think that outweighs a lot of the problems that we have in planning policy, because we are trying to create jobs in the agricultural business.
Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. Probably not aware, but I did actually used to run a mushroom business in India. So I am aware of the pitfalls and what can happen if the spores get damaged and the whole business is gone, which is what happened to our business actually. It was quite successful until then. So I do understand the background. But there again, this is in the countryside, temporary building that goes against our policies. So I'm a bit torn. Thank you.
I'm sorry. You've had your opportunity. I'm so sorry. And in fact, my contribution is that my heart breaks because I know how much you put into this. I think the forest school's wonderful. I think, you know, what you're doing on the land, you're doing your very best to survive and create a vegetable area and all the rest of it. There are just some unassailable issues in terms of our local plan, and we cannot go against all of those. I'm really sorry. The mushroom business could be done elsewhere. There is no absolute reason why it has to be on that particular land. I mean, there obviously is from your point of view, but in planning terms, there isn't. And that cannot therefore justify a new dwelling in the countryside. So much though it breaks my heart to have to say this, I'm afraid we will have to support the officers on this application. Is there any more debate? No. So we move to the decision. Item number 8, the recommendation is to refuse this application. Can I see all those in favour of refusal? 8, Chair. There's against refusal, 1. So I'm sorry, that application is refused. And we now turn to the next application. There'll be just a short period whilst we swap over the presenting officers. Thank you. So are we ready for the next application? This is agenda item 9. And it is the proposed use of an annex as a holiday accommodation and removal of section 52 agreement from outline planning permission. And our presenting of, and this is in at Sandy Lane, Waltham Chase. And our presenting officer is Liz Young. So if you'd like to give us your presentation, please, Liz.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to the proposed change of use of an existing domestic outbuilding within the grounds of Spencer Place to a self-contained holiday let. The application's also been accompanied by a deed to remove a section 52 agreement. So that's a legal agreement which prevents the building from being used for anything other than ancillary to the main house. Just moving on to the first slide, this just shows the application site, which is indicated by the red line. So the whole site falls within domestic curtilage of Spencer Place, which itself is a Grade 2 listed building. The extent of the red line basically indicates the extent of the garden area which would be formed to the holiday let and would be enclosed by fencing. So this next slide just shows an aerial view looking towards the site. So the yellow star marks the approximate location of the outbuilding. Spencer Place is just immediately to the right, so that's the L-shaped building. The red line indicates the location of the adjacent public right-of-way, which is about 70 odd metres to the east of the site. Site is not adjoined by any other residential properties, although one lies immediately to the east of the right-of-way beyond Spencer Place. The site lies in open countryside and approximately 350 metres west of the nearest settlement at Waltham Chase. So this next slide just shows the layout as it currently is. The outbuilding lies immediately adjacent to the main access into the site. At the moment, there is currently a parking area for 2 cars immediately alongside the building. The other building that you can see on this plan, that's this building here, if you can see the cursor, is the main garage to the main house. The main house itself is quite a large property of about 4 to 5 bedrooms with quite a large parking area out to the front. This next slide just shows the proposed layout. The only physical change to the site would be the erection of the proposed fencing. So that's just indicated by the blue line, it'd be a standard post and rail fence. As mentioned, it's already served by 2 parking spaces, so these would remain as they are. No changes are proposed to the exterior of the outbuilding itself. Moving on to the photographs. This is the view as you approach the site from Sandy Lane. So the entrance is just to the right of the photograph. So you can see the application building there. Backs onto the road. This just shows the view as you approach the drive, again with the application building in view on the left. So the driveway up to Spencer Place. This just shows the existing parking area. So beyond that, you can see the application building and further in a distance, the existing garaging to the main house. This next slide just shows the view along the drive. So you can see all 3 buildings. You've got the application building on the left, existing garaging, and then on the far right, there's the main house, Spencer Place. This final photo just shows the view looking back from the main parking area of the main house towards the application building. As mentioned, there's no proposed physical changes to the building itself. The greenhouse you can see there is going to remain. So that brings us to the end of the slides. The just in conclusion recommendation is that planning permission should be granted. It's considered that the proposed holiday let use, which would consist of 1 bedroom, is sufficiently low key for planning policy purposes, and conditions would be imposed ensuring it would remain as a holiday let and would not be converted to form a separate dwelling. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Okay, we now move to the public speaking, and we have 2 parish council representatives. Councillor Ogden, you're now here as a representative of the parish council. And is Ian still here? Yes. Lovely. Good. You know the routine. You have 3 minutes between you, and the time will start when you start speaking. Thank you very much.
You're fed up to see me, which is quite good because I just resigned from the parish council planning. It's been long planned anyhow. Anyway, I'd first like to say I have to make a declaration of interest. I know the applicant, who is my friend. He's a successful local businessman and we get on, especially as I'm a Pompey fan and he's a Saints fan. However, on this occasion, we're miles apart. It's up to national bodies to protect our local heritage. It's also the duty of local authorities, namely yourself and the parish council, to protect our heritage and the laws and the policy that are currently in force. You've got to ask the question, why is a long-standing Section 52 no longer required? The conditions that Winchester City Council are imposing are not enforceable. Everyone knows that. No one in Winchester City Council will visit the address to make sure that these conditions are applied. We have had a problem just a mile away. A holiday let becomes a permanent let. You have to ask the question, why is there 2 land registries entries, one for the Bovey and one to Spencer Place? The only reason is that removing Section 52 is the first stage of creating a separate dwelling. I'll leave you to Ian to explain why this should be refused.
Thank you, Chairman, councillors. Spencer Place is a late 15th, early 16th century timber frame listed building. It sits within a large open garden which contributes positively to its setting. In the garden, there's a large garage and a granny annex called the Bothy, as the officer has shown. The annex was created in 1988, subject to a Section 52 agreement, ensuring it would be for ancillary residential accommodation and to stop plot subdivision. Proposal before you would result in the conversion of the garage to a holiday let and the creation of a separate curtilage within the garden using a fence. The introduction of the fence will affect the relationship between the Bothy and Spencer Place and would have a significant detrimental impact upon the character of the setting. I think you can see from the photographs the openness between the house and the actual bothy. The nature of a holiday let is that it would become used more intensively than the annex, and the extent of domestic paraphernalia, for example, chairs, tables, possibly washing lines associated with the use, would crowd the limited space within the curtilage and have an urbanising impact. With a holiday let, there would be a higher number of comings and goings and a greater need for independence and privacy than required for the annex. As such, this increased intensity of the use would be apparent and would, together with the fence and paraphernalia, result in significant erosion of the setting of the listed building. The Historic Environment Officer has requested conditions to stop it becoming a separate dwelling. However, a holiday let is in effect a separate dwelling, which will be used independently from Spencer Place. Chairman Councillors, the proposal would adversely affect the setting of Spencer Place and will be contrary to policy CP20 and DM29, and as such should be refused. Thank you.
Very much. Very good timing. Members, do we have questions of clarification for our parish council representatives? Councillor Lee.
And thank you for that. You mentioned, you said you had some concerns about the trappings of domesticity spreading of paraphernalia and so on. But who's walking by? Who's noting this site and admiring it and so on? I wonder if you could just expand on that, please.
It's about the setting of the listed building that's the important part. I don't think it matters whether people walk past. I mean, the fact that the building's been listed is because of that openness and that setting and that relationship with the outbuildings. Once you put a fence in there, you're actually creating a separate curtilage in a separate area. So in itself, that has a detrimental impact. It's not necessarily that people come and see it. It's the fact that it has an impact on that setting.
Councillor Laming.
Yeah, going back to the land registration that you brought up, that this has got a separate registration to the house. How long's that been the case?
Very recent. Very recent. I was going to bring the paperwork with me today, but printed off and left it behind. So all I can say, it is really recent. It's not long standing.
I think that's the end of questions for clarification. If you could just switch off the microphone as you go. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Mr. Tutton, you are now speaking on behalf of the applicant. Welcome. You know the routine. You have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to present this deputation in favour of my client's proposal. Spencer Place is a 500-year-old Grade 2 listed building with a detached one-bedroomed annex called the Bothy that stands in the southwest corner of the village curtilage beside Sandy Lane. The Bothy has its own council tax reference and utility bills. The main house is expensive to maintain, so the Bothy yields vital rental income. Planning permission was granted 35 years ago for residential use of the Bothy as a granny annex, subject to a legal agreement which restricted its occupation. The deed of release from that agreement was completed on the 27th of November this year, so that matter does not now require consideration by this committee. After Spencer Place was acquired by my client's family trust, Al Sariki, last year, specialist letting agents advised that permission should be sought to use the Bothy as a holiday let. It was anticipated that the building would be particularly attractive to walkers and dog owners, so the view was taken that part of the garden area should be enclosed. Section 84 of the NPPF calls for the growth and expansion of sustainable rural tourism that respects the character of the countryside. In similar vein, policy MTRA4 of your council's adopted core strategy provides for the reuse of an existing rural building as small-scale, low-key tourist accommodation. My client's proposal is for such a use. Shedfield Parish Council recorded its full support for MTRA, but is the only party to contend that, and I quote, "This application will harm the character of the area." On 3 occasions, I invited the Parish Council in writing to precisely or explicitly describe the actual harm that would allegedly be caused, but it did not respond. In my judgment, occupation of the bothy by visitors would not harm the character of this area. Winchester City Council's Historic Environment team has confirmed that it has no objection to the proposed use. Chair, I've exercised my own judgment in the matter required by the development plan and the NPPF, and come to the view that none of the matters raised by the Shedfield Parish Council are of such moment as to justify a refusal of planning permission. The officers are right to conclude that permission should be granted and members are requested to accept their recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're getting very good at sticking within the 3 minutes. Members, do we have questions of clarification? Yes, Councillor Ashford.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that clarification. Could you just give me an idea how often if permission was granted, how many times the place would be let out for holiday let? Yeah, how often would it be let out as a holiday let? Yeah, every week or 2, 3?
How often?
Yeah.
Well, it would be covered by planning condition in terms of the length of period that people can occupy it and the gaps between. I can't predict in advance how popular it's going to be.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you for that. I'm looking at the site layout plan proposed, and it's had a blue line around it. That's obviously I guess the curtilage that would be attached to this property. Is that correct? And my question is this going to be hard fencing? And if so, what would that look like?
The form of fencing is yet to be agreed.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Laming.
Thank you. We heard from the parish council that this has just been registered as a separate area for the dwelling. Why has that happened?
I don't know. It happened before my instructions.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tutton. I think there are no more questions for you. You may return to your seat. Liz, do you want to update us on anything following the public contributions?
No, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
So, members, we move to questions on the whole report. I have a question about the fencing and the other things that are on. I can't quite see on that layout plan what else is proposed, but I was rather taken by the parish council's point about the open view from the listed building, and that this included both the garden buildings, the bothy and the garage. Is there any flexibility on that fencing? I mean, is it going to, how visible is it going to be, and can we condition that it should be minimal, just fence and rail, and perhaps even painted grey or something so it disappears?
We could add a further condition on, just to give a bit of background on the fence and the layout. The application, when it originally came in, showed a much larger garden to the holiday let. So following no consultation with Historic Environment, that has been reduced in line with their advice. So they've reviewed this latest amended plan and confirmed that they're happy with the proposal. But equally, I don't see, there'd be no reason not to add a further condition on about the specification. the original proposal also included planting, which was considered to be just drawing more attention to the enclosure and adding to its impact. So that's been removed.
Councillor Lee?
Yeah, I just want, Chair, not just endorse what you just said. I think that's absolutely right, that somehow the vista needs to be left as similar to it is as the moment. And if fencing is needed, it needs to be something that is just, you know, demarcating the area without actually being intrusive. To pick up on the comments made about character, that would seem to me very important given the rural setting.
Councillor Gordon-Smith?
So I'm not sure whether this is a debate or a question, but to me, the fact that you've got an elderly granny living in there or a family on holiday, in terms of the extraneous domestic clutter, it doesn't have any material difference and isn't controlled by us anyway. But the fence, I think, is very critical. And you can imagine if you put up a close boarded fence, it would look horrendous and make it desperately suburban. But if you had a traditional parkland fence, you know, thin metal railings, black painted, something like that, that would pretty well disappear. And that would be, I think, in keeping with the landscape.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm sure we can condition that. So, although the agent did mention they wanted to let it to dog walkers as well as walkers, so it would need to have some sort of, you know, dog-proof wiring or whatever. But yeah, absolutely. Okay, and I think that's probably why there has to be a fence. Councillor Edwards.
Just picking up on your point there, the fence does not actually go around the entire perimeter of the property. So if somebody wished to contain their dog, it would not be very effective. So I think an indicative fence is what we're looking for here.
I get the impression that it does actually go all the way around to where there is, you know, thick hedging, and therefore the idea would be to enclose the area. But we can leave that to the condition, can't we? And ask our officers to do something appropriate with that. Good. Okay. Any more questions, Councillor Laney?
Yes, I think that I would like to see some sort of condition that if the property was sold as a separate thing, it wasn't sold as anything other than a holiday let, or it remains within the ownership of the main house, because I do listen to what the parish council have said. I think they have a valid point.
So just to confirm, the planning permission will run with the land. So if the owner was to sell the property, the planning permission would still be relevant. And there's condition 3, which is recommended regarding the tourist accommodation and the standard timeframes to ensure that it is tied down to a short-term lettings.
Thank you.
Any further questions? So we move to debate. Do you want to do the condition first, Lorna? We'll go to debate and we'll discuss the condition at the end of debate. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Edwards is quite correct. It shows on page 204 where it's not fenced. It has a small wall, but it's not fenced. The fence is the crucial part, as far as I'm concerned, on this particular application, because if it is going to be fenced, then the design of that fence is crucial. And I think when you look at the photographs from page 206 through to the end, what is very, very apparent is the openness. Now, once you start to close off a segment of that, it will alter the whole process. I think this would be, the fencing would be detrimental to the siting of the listed structure, in my view. I'm afraid I'm not going to go along with the officer's recommendation on this one, because I think I understand from the parish council's point of view, it looks very much like it's going to become eventually a standalone building, which could be, does require planning permission, yes, I agree. But the fact that the building's already on site, it'll be already fenced, it will look and act as though it's an individual structure. I think it's detrimental to the character of the surroundings.
Thank you. I do understand that it is possible to omit the fence from our permission. So if that's the case.
Chair, just to summarise, you can have two choices. You can omit that fence. It's shown on an approved plan, but we can add a condition that says notwithstanding the details on the approved plan, that fence indicated is not hereby permitted, and full details can be submitted to the local planning authority in terms of its height, its siting. We can do those different things. And also I could recommend also removing PD rights for any new operations such as fencing.
I'm a bit confused, Chairman, because normally we have to take the plan as presented, not an adjustment to the plan when it's being presented.
Chair, just to confirm, yes, we don't normally want to enter the realm of negotiating planning permissions in the middle of your considerations, but for small elements that can be either removed or changed or details to come in, these are small elements that we would normally regularly adjust on the conditions, rather than, for example, when we were talking about the play space earlier and the types of boulders, these are starting to get into the sort of the realms of the primary part of the planning permission rather than the sort of additions to it. The main part of this planning application is considering the use of it. So these are additional sort of operational parts of the development that would be acceptable to say that it should be removed through condition, or acceptable to say that it's not approved through condition and that we get further details later on.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You've covered my point, and I think the points are well made by Councillor Reid. My view is that a fence would be a step too far. We need to keep the character and the vista in place. And well, change of use, well, I could live with that, but it's that changing that character, which I think would be totally incompatible with the surroundings. Thank you.
So we have a new condition which takes away all mention of fence, I believe. And
yes, we can have one condition that takes away the mention of fence, and then we can have another condition that takes away any rights of the developer to, or the owner to, install fencing as well, which is removing PD rights for Part 2 minor operations.
So is that agreed, members, as a new condition? Yes, thank you. So now we move to the decision. So this application is recommended by our officers for approval. Can I see those in favour of approving this application, please?
That's 9 unanimous, Chair.
No, I believe that's 8 actually.
Oh, is it 8? I can't see. Oh, 8, sorry.
Oh, 8. And those against? And abstentions? So we have 1 abstention.
1 abstention.
Thank you very much, members. So we finished just before 1. So we're now going to break for lunch, and we will come back and start the next session at 2 p.m. Thank you very much.